Well, here we are. We are live here from St. Louis, across the street from the Battledome. Getting a little bit of background light here, but I think that's okay. We are live here. We have the Professor Andrew Murray here, as always, and then Anthony Miller here, credentialed, covering the game today. If anything sounds weird, looks weird, let me know. I think we've done all the checks and everything. Just a reminder, if you like all the work we're doing here, we gave away 2 sets of tickets today to the UFL Championship game, making up for some of the Kaka crybabies that aren't going. And then we gave away a bunch of jerseys too. Like this is a Royal Retros custom jersey. So if you like the work we're doing, like and subscribe. When we get up to 4,000 subscribers, we're going to give away 2 season ticket sets to the UFL 2025 season. So be aboard with that. First off, Anthony, how are you doing? We had fun last night. We went to Hooters, walked around downtown St. Louis. How are you doing, Anthony?
I missed my Shiner vodka. That's okay. We still had a good time. It's weird to be here. It was kind of weird last year. We made the same comments in San Antonio, like, we actually got to a championship game. Like, this is great. And now this year it's like, wow, we have USFL and XFL going at it for the UFL Championship. It just feels like a completely different world from what it was just a year ago, even just 6 months ago.
I know we were what was it? It was Anthony and Evan and I were at Arlington for the kickoff, and now we are here, 12 weeks later, whatever. Andy, how are you doing here? You missed last week. John Lewis filled in. John Lewis will be on the show. Big guest list coming up today. I'll plug that in a second. But Andy, how are you doing, sir?
Well, I have to tell you, Reed, it's just as hot here as it was in Mexico. However, there is nary a sea turtle or beach in sight. So the climate could be a little bit different, but no, it's great to be back. I'm happy to see you. You and John did a great job last week. You absolutely punked John with that video of his predictions at beginning of the year.
So cool.
Really, really just masterpiece work by you, Reed. But no, it's fantastic to be here. I'm excited. St. Louis has been actually, I know this sounds crazy, but it actually has been a bucket list city of mine for a long time. I've heard a lot about the Gateway. We saw it last night, all lit up, the Arch. Hopefully we get a chance to go into it. But no, I'm very excited to be here and just be back stateside.
Yeah, everyone's checking in here. Jenna's checking in. A foosball fan. Yes, we made it. Yeah, like I said, I think I fixed Anthony's mic. If there's any mic issues, just put it in the chat. I think I've got it. But rolling through here. So we will be here live for the next 10, 12 minutes or so. Then we have a big guest list today. I've posted in the YouTube description here, but Pat Rifino is going to be joining. We thought Pat was going to be here today. His work commitments did not allow him to be here. Emery Hunt, everyone loves Emery. Max, producer Max, is going to be on. The aforementioned John Lewis. We're going to have Greg Parks, Mike Mitchell, Evan Wilsmore, rounding it out. So it should be fun here every 15 minutes or so. Yes, John says, he is still hurting from that punking. Yes, we got John punked on that. But anyway, big guest list. Like and subscribe. We're talking the game today. We're going to be talking kind of sights and sounds or lack thereof around the stadium. All the kind of stuff we do. Not trying to be overly critical, but trying to be optimistic about, and realistic about everything. I go first as Andy, just because we were at coffee today looking at like sights and sounds around here. What do you make of this today? Because we've had a lot of comments like, are there signages or what's going on? What have you made of kind of the a lack thereof around the stadium?
Yeah, not too many signs. I mean, I saw more signs for the St. Louis Blues, their hockey team, than I have really for the championship game. However, that has not stopped us from seeing a number of individuals who have worn colors from the league. A couple of Battlehawks fans, obviously, still maybe grumbling about last week, still floating around. Plenty of Birmingham people coming around here. We've run into a number of individuals. Our hotel lobby, I will say this, is absolutely popping. I cannot believe how
we are at the Stallions headquarters. I posted, I said, hey, I could have pulled the fire alarm last night. So be lucky there. But yes, we are in the Stallions. They have vandalized their own media signage here. And it's truly a Birmingham takeover here at the hotel.
Yeah, it really is. But no, I mean, obviously this is the thing that is important to see, especially when you have a game like this. That's a neutral site game, a game that maybe out-of-towners or people that are in St. Louis are maybe not familiar with. Obviously, during Battlehawks season, when it's going on, there's plenty of signage around the town, as far as I know, proclaiming that things are going on. I haven't really seen so much of that as far as this game goes, but maybe perhaps when we go around the stadium, we'll see more of it. But we've been mostly in quarters, our hotel quarters so far.
Yeah, it's been fun. We were here last night. We saw Russ Brandon chit-chatting, and I saw a friend of the show, Russ Giglio, walking around. Just a lot of networking, nothing too crazy here. Moose was at Starbucks with us today for breakfast. I was excited. I got a couple questions here, but first, Anthony, thoughts? Yeah, walking around the city. I mean, I was telling Andy, when we went to WrestleMania, the first WrestleMania I went to years ago, flying in and seeing like signage around the convention center, around the stadium, like feeling like you were kind of in your own pocket in the city of like anyone around here kind of knows. I really like that. We don't get it. We don't have any of that. I would like to see that in the future. We've kind of bemoaned this, but what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I'm actually staying in the hotel right next to you guys, and there's actually a lot of Birmingham Stallion fans there as well. So there's been a lot more Stallion fans than I thought there was going to be. I've seen a couple of Renegades. I have seen just UFL in general, but it seems like this is kind of the Stallions headquarters. But I've seen more St. Louis Cardinals and, like Andy said, Blues stuff than I've really seen with any Battlehawks or UFL stuff. So I didn't even see it. I drove around with the Uber driver around the Dome Stadium, and I honestly didn't see anything UFL related. I was looking to see if there was any signage or anything like that. I saw absolutely nothing for it. So I think if the Battlehawks would have been here this weekend, I think there would be a lot more of it, and they would have pushed it a lot more. But I think just because the Battlehawks are not here, they probably don't want to do as much work with it, or I don't know what the deal is with it, but I just haven't seen as much. I would like to see more though. I think that's something they can maybe improve upon in the future. Yeah,
a couple comments here, and Pat's standing by. We'll bring Pat on here at 12:15. I posted on Twitter, and part of it was kind of a joke, but I do mean that. Like it's, we have The Rock with the Cody crybabies during WrestleMania, and now it does really feel like kind of the caca crybabies that we're not here. Like our attendance hasn't been taken for granted all season, and we don't appreciate it. Like I got a lot of those comments, just really surprising. I mean, we pulled on our Monday recap, we pulled up the seating chart, saw a lot of resale tickets, which was surprising to me. So I do mean that. I'm like, you're here, the tickets are bought, show up, show out. Janet has a comment. Post in the chat what you think. What's the first score? Touchdown or field goal? Let's get let's get the algorithm working a little bit here. And then Football Binge wants to know, where did you get the custom jersey? This is Royal Retros. He hooked me. Dustin hooked me up. It says Markcast on the back. I wore this when we were down here for Memorial Day at Choctaw. Get on there. He'll do custom ones, but we always include some in our giveaways. So like and subscribe, be a part of the thing, get us up to 4,000, but we always do a couple giveaways. Dustin, I think we had 4 for the last one. I just mailed them all out last week. We had the Teamu one and Brandon Silvers and Cavante Turpin and PJ Walker. So that was all good. And then last comment here, UFL Isaac, thanks for putting me in the spinner wheel. Yeah, so like and subscribe, get a part of that. We'll do the season tickets. I would like to get all that done before the season kicks off, but I don't know if we're going to I don't know how hot the CFL content will be this summer, but we'll see. I guess football-wise here, and then, like I said, we'll bring in Pat. Anthony will go first. Just general thoughts for the game, and then I think we'll get more into the league and the season as we go on, but let's talk a little football at the start.
Yeah, so I like – it's an interesting game because I think the Brahmas have better individual talent than the Birmingham Stallions do. I look at the roster for the Brahmas and I'm thoroughly impressed with them. And I think it was a crime that there wasn't any, there was just 2 all UFL selections when there's so much talent on offense and defense. But I also understand Michigan had a lot of good talent. Birmingham had a lot of good talent. So I understand why that happened. But, I love the mentality of this Brahmas team and Wade Phillips. And, they're the underdogs because, being an Eagles fan, and we were the underdogs of every game when we won our Super Bowl back in 2018. So I think the Brahmas have that same mentality. But to me, it's just the way the Stallions play overall as a team. It's just, look, they've lost 4 games in the last 3 years, and there's a reason for it. They're very, last week may not show because of the 4 turnovers, but this is a very disciplined team. They're very smart. They don't get, crazed when they're down by a lot. They know how to win games. This has been this team has a winning mentality. Skip Holtz is a big reason for that. He's you see his demeanor on the sidelines, like when Adrian Martinez was making, mistakes, Skip was going up to him and he wasn't yelling at him. He was just coaching him through it. I do this thing when I'm a sales manager, when I do the compliment sandwich, you got to compliment, then you get the criticism and then you compliment him at the end. Skip Holtz does that a lot, and it really resonates well with the players, and they really seem to connect with him on that aspect. So I think from the football side, I love the individual talent for the Brahmas, especially with guys like Anthony McFarland Jr., Jonte Kirkland. Those guys have really made a difference in the offense. But, Stallions, the one interesting thing I want to see today is the quarterback position. How's it going to work with Adrian Martinez and Matt Corral? Because it sounds like both guys are going to play in some capacity, unless Martinez absolutely kills it in his first couple of drives. But I'd like to see how the quarterback situation is going to be today.
Yeah, Andy, what do you like? I know you were out last week. You caught up, obviously saw the games, but this disrespect that the Brahmas felt. They're like, oh, we were in the all UFL, which I didn't believe. And then Mike reported that and at least told us. And then it certainly seems that way. And Wade and the coach of the year. I mean, it really feels like the Brahmas, kind of like the Renegades last year, playing with a chip on their shoulder.
Look, this Brahmas team absolutely deserves to be here. They proved it thoroughly. They made basically everyone eat their own crow. And I'm going to have to eat my own here on the show too, just like Mr. Lewis did last week on your show. Look, this team has been remarkably resilient, given the circumstances, given the fact that most of this roster, these coaches were moved from the Houston market, obviously, over to San Antonio. A lot of transition, injuries, Chase Garber's getting hurt. A man who, I'll be honest, before the season, I did not have a lot of faith in as a passer or really as a commander of this offense, but he has been brilliant in the time that he has played with them. He's been methodical, accurate, smart. This whole team just plays with a lot of discipline, similar to the Stallions team I think we talked about as well. Just a lot of even keel emotions anytime something gets out of hand. This team has really held firm in the face of a really lot of tough storms. I mean, I go back to that week 2 win against Memphis when they were down. They had absolutely zero reason coming back in that game. There was 4.5 minutes left, yet they found a way to get 2 touchdown drives. Garber's engineering those, and I think that set the tone for the rest of the season. They knew that they can win and they will win if everything goes right. But they are just remarkably resilient. This defense has been incredible. Wade Phillips has been just a master orchestrator of another fantastic unit. AJ Smith has really been coming into his own, really getting this offense to hum at times. I'm really just impressed. And honestly, like I said, I was completely wrong about them before the season started, as were a lot of people, and they've been showing it. And they have one more chance to really prove it this afternoon.
Let's do a couple comments. We'll bring in Pat. Pat standing by here. We asking Philip thinks San Antonio with a Kirkland TD. We had Zach here checking in. St. Louis, the Battlehawks. Zach, you got to track us down today, buddy, if you're at the game. First score will be a field goal by Birmingham. Calling it. Be the first game to go to overtime. San Antonio will win by a touchdown. Not rooting for anyone. But root for the Markcast, Zach. Root for the Markcast. All right. Football binge. The defense is different from San Antonio. Philip checking in here. Should be the Roughnecks playing today. And then we have here we go, foosball fan, Anthony Miller is the definition of legit. So there you go. Liking that. Let's bring in, we'll bring in Pat here. But let's bring in very happy BC Lions back to 1-1 here following 50 Cent. The Mariners beat the Rangers. Really an all-out night here, Anthony. But like this was just, and we're bringing it back just to set the stage. We are we are in St. Louis. Like everybody's like, hey Reed, like where are you guys? Like, are you coming out? We're doing karaoke, all this. We sat at the bar, watched the CFL game on Andy's iPad. CFL haters be damned. That's what we were doing. I know Farham was at the game, and then we watched the Mariners as well. So really doing all that. Let's bring in Patrick, sir. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, guys. I wish I was with you guys, obviously, but duty calls, as they say.
Yeah, we're here with Pat. Let me see if I can bump your mic up a little bit. I think you're good on your end. Pat, thoughts on the Caw Crybabies here? You're the local St. Louis now, obviously not here right now, but what's your thoughts about this kind of, this league has never appreciated us. Like now we've been taken for granted all season.
I mean, the fans don't play the game. The team has to win. And I know the league appreciates the St. Louis fans because they obviously did it in St. Louis. So it's like they were kind of banking on this, like that hopefully they were able to go. But in the end, like you have to win the football games. Like last year, I don't know if I said it on the last time I was on your show, Reed, but I think I was like, yeah, it sucks. Like they won 7 games, but I remember like there was a Mets team that won like 90 games and didn't make the playoffs. It happens in baseball all the time where you have a 92-win team and they don't make the playoffs and it comes down to 1 or 2 games. It just happens. It's sports. Not everyone can get in. This isn't the NBA where half the league is getting in and then you have the play-in tournaments. I think it's an 8-team league with 10 games. Every game counts. Win the games. Like I mean, it sucks, but, Arlington kind of threw a shoe in there last year and won. So how could we be like they didn't deserve to get in? I mean, they beat a good Defenders team that 5, 6, 7 of those guys got NFL contracts and stuck, and then they beat a good, they beat a good Houston team that, if it wasn't for maybe an injury to Brandon Silvers last year, probably could have been in that championship game as well. So I mean, I think you got to get over it. I think part of it is like, this isn't the St. Louis Battlehawks League. This is the UFL now. It's all one team technically. So if you're going to go to the game, go to the game. And I mean, it's not like we got the Rams to watch. So I mean, this is it for football, like for.
Yeah, I know. It's funny. Like, I was messaging with one of the league officials last night, and they were like, "Hey, what do you think attendance is going to be?" And I said, I think there's a lot of upset Battlehawks fans, and they're like, "But they lost fair and square." I mean, there's no. They did, and they also lost last year too, and that didn't prevent it as well.
Yeah, and these aren't controversial calls where it's like he's in, he's out. I mean, when they lost to Seattle, I think they lost by like 10 points, and then they mismanaged the game last week, and I think the offense is extremely effective in a 4-minute offense and whatnot, and their clock management the last minute and change was pretty abysmal, where they couldn't, I'm always in this league, not to get sidetracked, but in this league, with the onside kick being such a high percentage play with the 4th and 12, I am of the mindset of go for the field goal with the more time, because in the end you still need the 9 or 10 points. So I mean, as soon as I feel comfortable in field goal range, I'm going to kick it, and then I'm going to go for that 4th and 12 and go to my play sheet and whatnot. So I know we're talking a lot about last week, but I mean, just get over it. I mean, one, it doesn't really affect your life. I mean, I don't think these people bet enough income on these games to have life-changing income being altered by it. So I mean, go to the game, enjoy the game. If you're that hard up on it, don't go to the game. How many times are you going to be able to go to a championship football game in St. Louis regardless? So
yeah, let's get attendance predictions in the chat. I know that was something people wanted to know. We have a question here. We'll circle around here, and then we'll get back to Pat here on this, which I like doing kind of the live shows for this. We can kind of get some stuff like this. Hussey, my CFL co-host for the Monday shows, or I think it'll be Tuesday this week, wants to know, and I have thoughts. We'll go around. Is this the most promising spring football has ever looked? We'll go first, Anthony.
Yes. I think the talent level we've talked about.
We'll get to you, Pat.
The talent level is the best that we have seen in spring football, at least probably since the USFL back in the 80s. I think it's going to be interesting how they handle the next year or so when it comes down to marketing and getting out to these local markets and getting, people excited about their coaches and players. And, the one thing the XFL did well last year, and even the USFL has done a lot, back in 2022, was they did a great job of telling the story of these players and these coaches. The USFL had that documentary that they were shooting like once a week that we got to watch behind the scenes stuff with. The XFL last year, they had their own documentary with it. I would like to see more of that from the UFL next year, is bring back a documentary where we can watch, once a week for 30 minutes to an hour, what's going on behind the scenes, tell us stories about the players, because that's what it's all about. And I know this year was different just because there was a merger and it was a lot to put everything together last second, but I want to see more stuff like that next year so we can get connected to these players and coaches, because I know there's a push for everyone to be like, well, we don't want to make this a developmental league. Like, we want to make this its own league to stand on during the spring. Well, let's start acting like it and start getting, these fans used to these players that are going to, you look at guys like Luis Perez, his story is great. I don't know. I'd love for him to be in the NFL. I don't know if he's ever going to get into the NFL. Like, spring football is kind of his thing. So let's keep telling his story and stories that are similar to it. So this is the best I think we've had in spring football, but we're going to see in the next year or two, it's going to be make or break to see, how this league is going to work out.
Just a side note from that, like, I agree with you. The documentary Player 54, about football, whatever, but like, providing more players to local media is a great, like, if you don't want to expense doing a weekly, like, we're going to fly in. Cause like I was in DC with the Player 54 crew for the playoffs last year for the XFL. I'm like, it's a huge undertaking. It's ESPN. Like I get, and I would like to see that too, and more support of the UFL Today show, and like actually promoting that on social media and posting that. But like, just let's have more than 2 media availabilities for the Birmingham Stallions going into the championship game. I don't think that's crazy. Andy, what's your thoughts on this? And we'll get to Pat, because I think Pat's going to disagree, and then I have thoughts. I want to give it a little bit.
I do think from a talent perspective in this century, I will say it's about as good as it's going to be. I really do believe that. As far as whether it's being as recognized as it should be, obviously we have a lot of thoughts on that. I think it's getting better. I am very encouraged by the TV ratings last week. I think those were actually past my expectations, to be honest. So from an exposure standpoint, sure. As far as TV goes, absolutely. I think it's probably about where you're going to have it. But as far as getting that message out further, there's a lot more work that needs to be done. And I do believe that that's really the part of it. I do think, and maybe Jason can disagree with me, and I'm sure a lot of Canadians would disagree with me, but I do think it could be at a point where, similar to the CFL, where we know this product is great, we need to get the message out more. There needs to be more visibility. I mean, people were debating about this last night, but I mean, the BC Lions hosted over 53,000 people in their stadium last night. I mean, you could debate whether or not they were there for a concert or a football game, but the fact of the matter is those people were in those seats in that stadium, and a lot of people got exposed to that game and to not only the franchise, but to CFL Canadian football in general for the first time in their lives. So that experience can also be had here in spring football. You can get someone to have their first game, their first experience, their first taste of this sort of experience. And I think that needs to be more addressed. But as far as the like I said, the talent level goes, a lot of the coaching, I do think it's pretty exceptional. I just want to see, I really just want to see it more visible. As I said, that's really my biggest takeaway.
Let's go, Pat, and then I'll give a little spiel.
I mean, I think as far as like the marketing standpoint, I don't think anything tops in our lifetime the XFL 2020. I just think it was so dynamic, and I mean, Vince is the greatest showman, essentially. So, I mean, that's my opinion on it. From a talent perspective, I definitely agree. Something that I always kind of try to circle back with talent right now, and I think I've talked with John Vogel both on air and off about this, is now that COVID is kind of evening out, you're having this influx of players because you have these 24 to 26-year-old men who are shooting to the NFL right now because they've all had like 7 years of eligibility, plus the COVID year, plus an injury, plus, their mom had a birthday so they could, it's mildly ridiculous with the transfer portal and whatnot. So I do think now you're starting to get these influx of guys to where like, yeah, are they NFL players? But NFL GMs are like, well, I need this guy to be my kickoff guy, and there's a 22-year-old that I could pay the same. I don't really care about this 25-year-old. Like the Utah quarterback Cam Rising is going to be 26 when he comes out, I'm pretty sure. I mean, does he get an NFL shot? Yeah, possibly. I don't know. That's a different show. But I do think like that's the influx of talent that the UFL could like benefit from and whatnot. And Reed, I know I wrote this article about it on your thing, is like the QB purge and whatnot, because there's like this influx of guys like, there was Chase Daniel and Brian Hoyer and like Mike Glennon who were clogging roster spots and whatnot. Those guys are kind of getting purged out. And I do believe part of it is because, the UFL and just like kind of this like trickling of talent. And I know Emery's going to come on here and probably talk about that, but it's like, do we like what's going to be the kind of like evening out of like the AJ McCarrons versus like the Brian Smith from Delaware Valley State quarterback that like would never get an opportunity. But talent level wise, yeah, 100%. Marketing level wise, it's the whole let's just get through this season.
Yeah, I'm kind of, I don't know. I'm really positive right now in the TV ratings. I'm really positive about how that all went. And I agree with what Andy said. I think the playoffs succeeded and we've seen the growth all year. I don't know if, and I've said this last week, I don't know if we see that 30-40% growth again next year, because you can't give more time slots. We have the report out that it's going to be, and Mike was reporting that, the Friday night, UFL games, potentially not expansion, right? We're just going to be moving expansion, but we're going to be moving games to Friday. So I think that's going to hurt. And then I always hear in the back of my head this like Fox, UFL, Divide, Redbird, kind of whatever. And I mean, it's really outside of like more my purview to like, I don't know, that's more of like a Mike thing. Like, hey, what do you know, whatever. But like, I hear enough rumblings about that. Like, I think that there's something going on there with, Fox thinking, okay, well, we know what we're doing and like we don't need to spend as much, and look how much money we saved the first year, and then the XFL, and you guys lost all this money. It's like, I don't know if that comes into a head. Like, I don't know if you guys have any thoughts about that, but like, it still doesn't feel like it's like from enough of what I hear, it's not like in simpatico, like we're all in this together still. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think this league is just trying to find their identity right now. Like, this merger was never going to be smooth from the get-go. And I think it's been as smooth as it can be under the circumstances. But yeah, I mean, you got two different mentalities where the USFL, they had their option. They would still have their 4 hub cities for this year. And then if it was the XFL, they would probably be, continuing playing in their home markets. Like, there is a different mentality to it. But at the end of the day, I don't know if it's a USFL side or whatnot, but this league has got to realize eventually you're going to have to spend money. You're going to have to get these players into their home markets, get these coaches in the home markets, and get them connected with the people in their local markets. Because if you don't do that, then they're eventually not going to care. They have to be able to do that. And you can play conservatively and maybe it worked this year, but next year I want them to be more aggressive in marketing. I want to see them out in doing more local events. I don't want to see DC Defender players doing Salvation Army in Arlington. Like, that's not going to help. Like, DC fans don't care because you're not helping Washington. You're helping Arlington, Texas. Like, this is not the Arlington Defenders. Like, these are the DC Defenders. Get them in their cities. That's how you're going to make this thing better. I mean, the ratings are encouraging. That's good. I think it will continue to slowly go up. I don't think, like you said, Reed, I don't think it'll go as much next year. But I think the big thing is just get in your home market and spend a little more on it. And like, it's not going to kill you to do it.
Let's go Andy and then Pat and then Emery standing by. We'll swap out here at the bottom of the hour. Andy, thoughts?
I think there's a difference between being frugal and protecting your treasure chest. And for me, I think there's a little bit of asset protection as opposed to asset spendage. And for me, the reason I think this is such a part of the discussion is because when you decide to be a little bit more conservative with your spending, you're going to hold back and not want to do some of the things that you want, which, look, I understand. I'm not saying go out there and shoot off all the fireworks because it looks pretty. Like, we've seen cases in the past with teams or sports leagues that tried something and it failed, but maybe it was memorable. I just got done reading Paul Woods' book about the Rocket Ismail, and the one year the Toronto Argonauts won in 1991 when Bruce McNall, Wayne Gretzky, and John Candy all on the team, and they all just basically went for broke and just did a bunch of crazy stuff. It was spectacular. It was messy. They won the title, and then they basically went basically bankrupt after that. But it was extremely memorable. So I'm not like, that's the extreme level of it. I think you can have a happy medium where you can say, hey, let's spend a little bit of money. Let's put in a little bit of capital. Let's at least start putting targeted marketing and trying to attack certain demographics. I'm not saying that you have to go pouring all of your cash out the window. Like, that's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is that there needs to be at least a little more forethought of, it's not just going to be status quo, because status quo and riding the line isn't really going to push the envelope. It's just going to keep things even keel, which from a survivability standpoint, I understand. But as far as like getting new people and really thriving and trying to at least attempting to grow your asset, which I think is the ultimate goal, I would think, from Fox and everyone involved here, you have to be able to push your chips a little bit more into the middle of the table.
I got a comment here from Logan. We'll touch on that, I think, when Max comes on about expansion and then after the season. Pat, let's get to you here, and then we'll swap out with Emery here in just a minute. Pat, thoughts on that?
I mean, I think Andy's right. The only thing I'd like to hear more on is like his targeted marketing and whatnot. I feel like something with St. Louis. You got to get them over the hump of like the 45K and whatnot. I don't know what that is, but my targeted marketing would be more towards obviously the bottom half of the attendance list and whatnot. I think with St. Louis, you go with that to save funds. You go with the it's not broke, let's not fix, or if it ain't broke, don't fix it type thing. And that's kind of if we're talking about like saving money. But also I think it would help if they would make a championship game and win the games they're supposed to win on that front. Reed, obviously I know it's Emery's time to kind of punch out, or for me, I did want to add something that I wanted to say in the beginning of the hour. Big shout out, by the way, to a couple Missouri natives, Dan Isom, St. Louis guy. His father used to be the police chief there. He's a defensive back for the Birmingham Stallions. So you should see a couple of those guys. And then someone, and I'll call him out, Luke was like, oh, I'm seeing all these Nebraska guys there for Adrian Martinez. No, it's actually Carlos Davis, who is a Kansas City native, which Kansas City football, probably one of the most underrated places in the United States from recruiting. That's a lot of his family is there, and then maybe we'll see some other KC natives there as well. So, I mean, overall, I think it's gonna be a good game. So, I mean, I'm excited for it. I think Birmingham wins. Throwing it in there.
Sorry, I was trying to text my mom a link to watch the show. I ended up sending to hop on the show. So I don't know if we want.
I thought you were texting your mom to get another year of eligibility for the Marcast.
Yeah, no, I don't know if we need Susan's thoughts here on the show. We'll get her on the watching in the YouTube comment. All right, Pat, I appreciate it. We wish you could have been here. Thanks a lot for hopping on.
Always, guys. Thank you. Great stuff.
So like I said here, we're bringing on Emery Hunt. Like and subscribe. Get us to 4,000 subscribers. Your big guest list here. Emery's just one of the many coming on. But Emery, people love hearing from you on here. How are you doing, sir? We did our big playoff preview show a couple weeks ago, and now you're calling Elf games. Anthony's involved in that as well. Busy guy. How are you doing?
Doing fine, man. Appreciate y'all bringing me on the show as always.
Do you guys have questions for Emery? Think about that. I'll ask him one here, and then maybe we can toss to the panel. Thoughts about the game today? I mean, Brahmas playing with a chip on their shoulder here. I can't remember if you had them winning against the Battlehawks. I would presume probably not. So what do you make of the championship game today?
It's fun because I know we're going to get a competitive game. I know we're going to get a physical game. And this one still has some more intrigue. As we know, the lone loss for Birmingham comes from San Antonio. So we know, even though you can't really peg what is San Antonio's offense, even now as we're in the championship game, but they find ways to score enough to win games. We know their defense is good. Their run game, I think, is better than their passing game, but their passing game, for whatever reason, finds fire at some point in a game. And we've seen Birmingham kind of get bored with their opponents at some point in time. Sometimes that has came back to haunt them, as it has them when they lost that game. So this should be fun. Quarterback is going to be intriguing for Birmingham. We know we have the MVP at Birmingham with Adrian Martinez, but we saw how that was going for them last weekend and needed Matt Corral, which just adds all kinds of intrigue to this ball game. So I'm excited to see how it's going to play out, because I know we're going to get a good game no matter what.
We got here Javon checking in here, the czar of the playbook. That's good. And then Pat here. Fun fact: Emery's the only person on the screen I've met in real life. So there you go. Yeah, Pat, we tried. Pat, we came to St. Louis. We can only do so much. It's like I get that a lot when I go to like the CFL, and then the people they're like, oh, and then they don't. I'm like, I'm in Canada. I've done the hard work. Like you need to. Like I've had that where people are in like other sections just of the stadium. I'm like, okay, I'm in the same province here. Thoughts on that? Let's get Anthony. Like, yeah, because the Brahmas like haven't been great all year. I mean, they're working with injuries, and like he said, consistency. It really feels like a different vibe than Birmingham. What's your thoughts on Emery's comments?
I think with San Antonio, it's their defense has been consistent, right? They've been the best defense in the league this year, I think, overall. I think it's just been their offenses. I don't know. Even last year when they were the Houston Roughnecks, like there was just something weird about the offense. Like the first half of the season, the offense was spectacular, and then Kirkland got hurt, and then all of a sudden the wheels fell off the wagon for the offense, and it was just really inconsistent. I think the difference between this San Antonio team this year from the Houston Roughnecks team last year is I think the running game is stronger. I think when you have Anthony McFarland Jr., you got John Lovett, you got Morgan Ellison, like that backfield in San Antonio is ridiculous. And I think that was the big thing that what Houston was getting better at last year towards the end of the season was running the football with Max Borghi in them. But this running game has really made a difference. But, there is some creativity in AJ's offense with San Antonio, but I don't know. It feels like they're a big play offense, and then like the rest of the plays is very like short yard situations. Like they don't bomb the ball down the field. Like Chase Garbers doesn't have the strongest arm, but he's really accurate with the football. He's very precise with it. He knows where to put the football where it needs to be. And I think that, it's not the sexiest offense, but I think San Antonio's offense has been very efficient in how they're doing it. I think they're like 4th in the league in total offense, but they're one of the more efficient offenses. I think that's what makes them and Birmingham in this championship game right now, is because both teams can run and pass the ball, be efficient, and protect the football.
Yeah, that's a really good. Anthony, I mean, this is obviously we have Anthony and Emery on here. Really good comments around because I don't know, AJ was like hot last year and he was on the show, and then I know he had I don't know, it feels like this year, like Stella never got his groove going. Like, I don't know, it just feels like a really weird, it doesn't feel like the same offense through, at least from, I don't know any of this, but it doesn't feel like the same kind of team we were watching. And I know obviously all those kind of things, but the team on the field.
I think it really boils down to injuries for him. I mean, as Anthony mentioned, Jontre Kirkland, the second he went out the offense for Houston last year, things kind of fell apart. Also, Brandon Silvers was banged up last year. And this year, you kind of saw the same thing a little bit when Chase Garbers was out of the lineup and they had a bit of a rotation. Quentin Dormady tried his best, but I've never seen a man have the propensity to throw it in the fire more than Dormady does. There are times where he tries to fit it into the tightest window possible, and sometimes it goes well and sometimes not so much. So I think having someone like Garbers who's so even keel and be able to kind of control the flow of the offense really helps AJ Smith kind of control that vision and really play out his game plan. That he does tremendous work every week. He just seems to always have an idea of what he wants to do. It doesn't always get executed, but I do think they've been a lot more even keel this year as far as executing their plan. But I actually wanted to turn a question over to Emery. Emery, I'm sure you and I both are just a little bit bewildered that San Antonio even got into this position in the first place. For you, what's been maybe the most standout or the most significant part of the San Antonio Brahmas in kind of disturbing the established order here and being in the championship game?
They've been winning with subpar quarterback play, if we are being completely honest. And listen, I was early in the preseason telling folks that Garbers can play a little bit. Garbers is not bad. But when you look at the UFL, CFL, ELF, all of these leagues, right? These secondary leagues to the NFL, it is very tough to find sustained success if you don't have a quarterback that is mobile. And we're not talking about someone that's out there running a 4-2, but you have to be able to evade pressure, create off script, get outside the pocket, do things above the X's and O's. And those that tend to have those quarterbacks, i.e. Birmingham, consistently have been able to win. And we saw that last night with the BC Lions and Calgary Stampeders game. That's the difference between a Vernon Adams and a Jake Mayer. And in this game, it could be the difference between a win for Birmingham and a loss for San Antonio. But watching them, play in spite of quarterback play, but it's because of what you guys touched on, the explosive element of the run game. I think it's funny when you talk about the backs. It's fascinating to watch how San Antonio leans into their talent and gets those guys the football. On the other side, Birmingham, yes, they've always had a two-back tandem, but every year we've watched Birmingham, whether it's the 2 years in the USFL and this year in the ULF, the best back has always been CJ Marable, yet he's the one that doesn't get the football enough, and when they do give him the football, it gets the run game jump-started, the big plays start to pop. So that's going to be what I'm watching for, is how quickly they go to Marable in this game, because we've seen them lose possessions by trying to run the football and they can't convert. But if they go to Marable, Marable will get it. But we've seen San Antonio just lean on the explosive plays of McFarland, the consistency of Lovett, and then Ellison in short yardage goal line situations. So that's been their calling card: run game, good defense, timely special teams. Because if we're being completely honest, their receivers drop at least 3 or 4 passes a game that hit them in the face, and then in the crucial situations, here comes a clutch reception, and you're like, man, why you didn't catch that ball earlier in the ball game? But what has been consistent over the course of the season has been the run game, has been their defense, their ability to blitz, their ability to get home, get off the field. And that's something that is going to bite Birmingham if they can't put this team away early and also lean on their better back in CJ Marable.
Thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, look, this is, I think the winning mentality, the way to win championships, we've seen it with so many teams, is run the ball and have good defense. And that's something Birmingham's had over the last 2 to 3 years. That's what, San Antonio's had this season. They're both ranked in the top 3, top 4 in total defense. They're both the 2 of the best running teams in the league. So when you have that, kind of power, you're able to do it. But I love Emery's comment on the quarterback position, because look, the reality is, when we've talked with the XFL, like I remember talking with the XFL last year in one of the, I don't know, the inside the football meetings or the insider leagues or whatever it is. Neil and them have talked about, the XFL officials had talked about, it's really hard to find good offensive linemen. Yeah. Like there's just not enough offensive linemen out there. So you need to have a quarterback who can move out of the pocket, can throw on the run, can run with the football. Because if you got a pocket quarterback, they're going to get killed back there, because the development of the offensive lines are just, they're getting better, but they're not where any other position is in football. So you need to have quarterbacks that can move out of the pocket. And that's what has made Birmingham so good, is that Adrian Martinez is the leading rusher in the league, and he's been able to make plays with his legs. And I think that's what separates Chase Garber versus Quentin Dormney, is Dormney is just not mobile. Like he can't run like Garber's can. Like Garber's is not always going to run it, but he has the ability to move out of the pocket when he needs to. Because I remember AJ Smith at the beginning of the season said that he compared Chase Garber's to PJ Walker. Like he's got that type. I think PJ Walker's got a stronger arm, but they both can move out of the pocket when they need to. They're both very precise, accurate quarterbacks, and that's what's made the difference for San Antonio.
We got a question here. We'll go with this to Andy, and then we'll pass around to Emery and around here. This from Christopher. Christopher was one of the ones that gave away his tickets to the UFL Championship game. I think, and we have 4 different fans going to the game, courtesy of us, free of charge. So we tried to do our part here. We'll go first to Andy, and then we'll get to Emery. Speaking of quarterbacks, which quarterbacks do you see back next year? Either championship quarterbacks, Matt Corral, Jordan Tiamu, Luis Perez.
Yeah, we talked about this a little bit. I think there's guys that we talked about earlier who are the spring football lifers. Perez, in my opinion, is one of those guys. I love him. He's a fantastic player. Great story. I think he's really destined for these kinds of leagues. No fault of his own. It's just tough competition. I think his skill set really matches these kinds of leagues. Jordan Tomo, another guy. I think he's a spring football lifer. I really believe that. The guys you're going to see move on. I mean, Adrian Martinez is going to get a chance. We'll see if he can stick in a camp. I mean, he's definitely developed quite a bit since he was at Kansas State and Nebraska. I do believe that he is going to get a fair shot here. I mean, Skip Holtz just finds a way to send these guys off eventually. Alex Magoo leaps and bounds better last year, goes to Green Bay, signs on with them. Martinez is one. I don't know anybody necessarily from San Antonio. Memphis, I think Case Cookus is still going to hang around. I mean, he's just, again, kind of a spring football lifer if he can stay upright. Yeah. I'm more worried about his long-term prospects in other ways, not just football-wise. But I just don't really see a crop of guys moving on. AJ McCarron's really the wild card here. Does he want to continue doing this full-time, or does he just want to play as a backup, be on a practice squad, be with the Bengals? He seems to really relish the opportunity to play in front of his kids. He really, really, really appreciates that. I think it matters the most to him. I don't know if he's going to get another shot to play significant time in the NFL. I do see him. I personally, it's up to him, but I believe that he will stay around. So to answer your question, Martinez is like the only one that I can really see moving on and getting a shot. But, again, it comes down to relationships. Some of these guys get into camps that we don't expect to. I mean, Taylor Heineke is a perfect example. Never played in XFL 2020. Starts games in the NFL.
Well, no, and AJ wants to stick around to teach his kid when he gets his knee. He's got to get that to keep playing. Emery, last question for you. And I think it was at least at one point when we had you on talking about standouts and people, but obviously we'll relate this to quarterbacks. But yeah, has anyone played into, or what do you make of this before we get you out of here?
It's a great question, and I think you guys kind of know where I stand on it. Where yes, you want a league where guys can have a career. So Luis Perez or Jordan Tiamu, you want to see those guys back as backups, because you have to start creating new stars to get people to watch, i.e. a Lindsey Scott probably should have been playing in Arlington over Luis Perez. I know people love Perez's story and him having all the passing yards and, and leading in this and this and this, but they were always losing, right? So imagine if they had someone that was exciting. The PJ Walker would have been the Lindsey Scott. the challenge for this league is to go out and find those guys that you know for a fact. And it's twofold. It's find those guys that you know for a fact they're going to get snubbed by the NFL, and those guys that are going to be snubbed by the NFL to have the wherewithal to say, you know what, man, I'm going to go play here first, because I'm not going to go get 2 reps of throwing the football in a 90-man rookie mini camp and not make the roster. Just go play some ball, get some pro tape, and then come back at it. And so it requires a little bit of self-reflection and humbleness from the prospect, and a little bit of foresight from the league, because you can always grab the Luis Perez and the Jordan Tiamu and the AJ McCarrons, but you need to have those guys that are within that ripe age of 21 to 24 that still has a window of perhaps getting in the NFL, especially at that position. Every other position, you're looking for guys that can kind of become UFL veterans. And in order for that to happen, and this is kind of tying all my points in together, where yes, there's more than enough talent to have. I wrote an article on this in 2016. There's more than enough talent to have for each NFL team to have its own minor league team. Fast forward to now, there's more than enough talent to have a 24-team UFL. But let's just say we branch this out to 12 and keep it at 12, or if they want to keep it at 8 and develop that, what Moose Johnson talked about, having guys that just want to play in this league because they know that NFL window is closed. Well, making the salary $100,000 instead of $50,000 is the best way to do that, and that kind of keeps you in that 8 to 12 team league, and that's how you attract those guys that may be a G5. Let's say a Grayson McCall, who was at Coastal Carolina, who's now at NC State. Doesn't have the best NFL prospects, but you know the kid can play. It's kind of like Alex Magoo. Man, once he's done at NC State this year, tell him come play for the New Jersey Generals or whatever, right? And get him to play against pro competition. And then now he's going to create those opportunities for himself. And then you're going to see other young quarterbacks going to see, okay, well, he did it this way, I can go do it that way too. Because it's, as much as we like Adrian Martinez and we like the fact that he got in, in this league and did some great things, it's hard to say the NFL, which has the luxury of scraping off the top, yeah, okay, we found our franchise quarterback in Adrian Martinez, when in reality, he's going to end up being a QB2. Yeah, he's going to make some money, but do you want to play? And yes, you could make money, but you see what happened with AJ McCarron. He's like, man, I just want to play. Like, I hate being a backup. I just want to play. And I think a lot of guys really just want to play ball. And if more guys can see the big picture, then we'll see the salaries increase. They'll be able to create a substantial living in the UFL, and then we'll start to see this ecosystem just grow, develop, and become what we expect it to be. But don't get it twisted. There's room for more expansion. Financially, it doesn't make sense yet. But if they want to create that lead that they want, then the salary is going to have to increase.
Here, before you go, Abdul, here comes UFL Expansion Podcast episode in 3, 2, 1. Real quick, rapid fire. Max is standing by. Emery, real quick to you, because he does have a question. If Martinez was to get a shot, off the top of your head, any team that you think that would pop off for him?
I mean, that's a great one. The Ravens. You can even look at that division. The Ravens, Steelers, Browns. They all fit that MO. So Washington would be a good place to have a backup. Hell, Detroit. We don't know who you have yet in Hendon Hooker. They had Adrian Martinez in camp. Bring him back. You know what I'm saying? Because until we see what Hendon Hooker looks like playing pro football, he's still a relative unknown. Because he was coming off that injury.
Well, Emery, we appreciate it. Thank you for making the time as always. Check out Emery, and he's doing Elf games, and Anthony's doing Elf. Exciting stuff here. So, Emery, I appreciate you taking the time today.
Appreciate it. Next show, we'll talk about a UFL ELF championship game. We'll get to that. We'll get to that later.
We'll get to that. I appreciate it, Emery. Thank you so much. Let's get Emery out of here. We'll bring in Max. Max, first off here, Christmas time, we were talking to quarterbacks and everything. Tulea Tagovailoa, he's up in Hamilton now, man. CFL just signed him last week, right? I mean, you're fighting against all that kind of stuff. Max, you're unmuted. How are we doing here, sir?
I'm doing great. I'm I'm excited to finally see, whether that San Antonio regular season game, how much does that translate to this environment? It's going to be so totally different. You have to imagine Birmingham has a much more fleshed out, complete game plan than near end of regular season game that they kind of knew they were probably going to be able to clinch home field anyway. And then on top of that, even if they didn't, they might have gotten their home game anyway. So I'm feeling there's going to be a completely different attitude today.
Yeah, Coach Craig here checking in. I missed when he was talking expansion there. So yeah, Craig, I missed when you were popping in the chat here. We should have got Coach Craig on as well. I kind of just did a rapid fire here email list at the end of the week. And then Tom here. I haven't been able to see UFL games in Canada. Don't have cable. Hopefully, how do we not have a TSN or some partnership? Like,
I don't know. I mean, the CFL Plus concept is still wonderful,
but like, don't you think that they would have a UFL? I'm surprised that they don't have.
Isn't TSN a part of ESPN? Like, isn't that like
Max? Can we fact check this for Tom?
So, because of Canadian laws,
Max knows. Max knows. Of course, he knows.
Because there are certain stipulations that require, like, an American or other foreign entity cannot own more than 20% of these sorts of things. So TSN is 20% ESPN owned and 80% owned by Bell. So they have a lot of ESPN programming, but not all of it. They use a lot of ESPN IP, but not all of it. They do their own thing. They get to pick and choose what they want on their platforms. And last year, the XFL, they launched a streaming service called like TSN Plus or something, and they had it for the XFL on there. I don't think the UFL made it on there this time. So,
yeah, I like that when it was on ESPN, and you can do kind of like at least the games were on demand, and we had the Player 54 and kind of all that stuff. What do we want? I'm really loud here. What do we want to talk about here, Max? What are you expecting on the game today?
I'm expecting some more points for one. With Garbers being ready to go, with Birmingham hopefully expecting to open up their offense a little bit, and then on top of that offensive outburst last week there was 28 unanswered. I mean, that was amazing. And on top of that, it completely shut me up because I was already starting to party. I'm like, what would happen if Michigan won? And then because I just thought it would be very funny, and they were like, "You think you get to have fun? No. This ain't a game. This is life." And they shut that down real quick. So.
Yeah, the thought I was really getting excited about Birmingham missing. Sorry, is that bad? I mean, I'm not a journalist. I can be anti Birmingham all I want here, but I mean, it really did for a while there. It looked like Stallions might miss out.
I mean, I picked Michigan to win last week just because I thought Michigan was just on a better roll than Birmingham was. After that St. Louis Battlehawks game for Birmingham, I just didn't think the Stallions looked great to end the season. So I was concerned about how they were going to do into a playoff game with Michigan, but it ended up Michigan just shot themselves in the foot with 4 turnovers, even though Birmingham also had 4 turnovers, but Birmingham took advantage of the turnovers versus Michigan. Michigan didn't. I don't think they got any points off those turnovers, and I think Birmingham they got like 2 scores out of it. So that was the difference in the game. So yeah, look, we hate to be negative against Birmingham, but we at the end we want the Stallions to succeed. We love the Stallions as a team. But I think we've already talked about how we just want the city to maybe do a little bit better in attendance, even though they're not the worst. It's just just add a little more people, just add a couple thousand more, and we'll be good.
Well, when you see that layout of like in the bottom with it being Houston and Memphis and all of that, I want to make sure we touch on it, Andy, and then Max. I'm sure I'll have thoughts, but we asked Wade again yesterday about the player that they were supposed to sign that they didn't sign, and there was all the shenanigans about that. And I know that I got DMs from one of the individuals that was telling me about it, but then you saw a lot of other people trying to I heard maybe something was going on with that. And like Wade seems like he's trying to kind of sweep it under the rug. We're all just trying to kind of play by the rules. Thoughts on that? And I don't think it's anything nefarious. I mean, I think it's just like we're trying to get by and make everybody play by the same.
I think it was just sort of a technicality that maybe wasn't read into correctly by either party. It does seem I hate to use the word bias, but it does seem to have a little bit of that intrigue with it as far as the transaction not going through. But I do think I don't think that's what the league is trying to do. They're not trying to undermine people and not trying to let them sign certain players that they can. It is unfortunate, especially considering San Antonio's angle, especially with the injuries that they've endured. But I don't think there's anything nefarious at play either here. Going back to what Max was talking about a little bit as far as more points being scored, it's interesting. I've been looking up at a lot of the betting odds, which actually Anthony penned a great article this week about all the betting odds and some of the information going into this game. The over-under is 42 points. Last time these teams met, it was a combined of 27. So if we are to believe that both these defenses are really good, I would have to say I'd probably go with the slide under there. I know there's probably going to be a little bit more offense in this game from both sides, but I don't think there's going to be too much more. I do believe these two teams are defensive-minded teams from the outset, and I do believe that they pride themselves on that. So for me, I'd have to say it's probably going to be a little bit less than that. That's kind of where I stand on the point spread, or the over-under, I should say.
Max, thoughts on kind of the Wade thing of it, and then I have a follow-up. But thoughts on that, and I don't know, is that just Daryl kind of overstepping? I don't know.
It's probably a league rule, but the enforcement mechanism makes no sense because if I recall, they were allowed to sign a receiver instead. So they were still allowed to sign somebody, but just not that tight end that they wanted to sign. And the guy was literally like, from my understanding, he was in meetings like with the team.
Oh, he was through tests. I mean, he was all through everything, medicals and everything.
Like this makes so the tight end is not allowed, but then this random receiver they're allowed to sign it instead in the last second. You're allowed them to get somebody, but not the guy they want. What are we doing here? What's this enforcement mechanism? This makes no sense. So I don't want to say it's bias, but I do think that there's whatever the chain of command and the regulations, they don't make sense. It's improper and it should not be like this. They should have just been allowed to sign the tight end and carry on.
Yeah, I think it had something to do with like them not having enough tape and being able to like game plan and all that. I don't know. It's a weird thing with the league because it is kind of just existing in its own ether right now. But I think if you weren't good enough that you were on the team anyway, I don't know. Is it like that big of a mind changing to bring on someone like that?
I mean, I don't think it really would have. They just wanted a backup tight end, man. Like they only have one on their roster today because they couldn't bring in a backup. So why would you not let them bring in a backup tight? Like you're not going to have film on any random backup they sign. But like realistically, it's not like they're bringing in a ringer who is like, the very best player available and like would actually be better than their starting tight end right now. I mean, it's just a guy who's going to come in and play some snaps and maybe take over if the starter gets injured. Like you're putting them in a vulnerable position all for what? The sake of enforcing a rule? Like what is this? Why? It doesn't make any sense.
Follow up from Max, and then we'll move on to something else. Thoughts? What is like this game resonating online right now? Like I'm looking at I've been tracking our viewership. Like it's fine. I mean, we're kind of up and down. Like is this? It's what 4:00 Central. 5. I mean, it's not really. I don't know. It's not really prime time. It doesn't really feel like it's like. I don't know. How is this game resonating today? If you're looking online.
I don't feel like there's much more hype for this game than there was for last year's XFL title game or the USFL title game. They both got about the same amount of viewership. They about the same amount of interest as right now. I mean, I'm sure the fact that they're not going head to head with each other will help the ratings be a bit higher, and the fact that there's there's barely any real competition going on for this game. So, I mean, maybe it's possible that it actually gets above that 1.5 million number that we're all putting as like a kind of expectation. But I mean, if it hits 2 million, like I think you said you would do some kind of crazy thing if it hit 2 million. I will join you whatever your plans are for that because I just think that's impossible.
Yeah, Anthony, I mean, we missed the media day yesterday flying in. It doesn't sound like it was widely attended. I know part of that is obviously, St. Louis not being in this, but you would think that the media, if I'm St. Louis media, I don't know what the Cardinals are out of town. I don't know what I'm covering. I always think about that. Like I worked in local news, like if I'm a local sports department, like what am I covering today? But are you just surprised this, like it hasn't, obviously be different if the Battlehawks were in it, but it just kind of feels like out of the zeitgeist right now.
I'm not surprised by it. I mean, again, everything that this league has been put together and the lack of marketing and stuff like that, I think this is just kind of what it is. Like I'm not expecting it to be some kind of spectacular thing. I know Fox is really pushing on, hey, we're going to do a lot of innovative stuff on the on the air today that's going to be different from any sports broadcast. So I guess we'll see how that is. I know they've been pushing on Tom Brady, like, hey, Tom Brady's going to be, you know, in the booth in the second quarter. He's going to be presenting the UFL, you know, championship MVP award. Like, and that's cool. Like, I think that's all great stuff. But I think at the end of the day, like, if they do 2 million, that would just be a massive win. I am not expecting that. I expect it to be a lot like the numbers last year, 1.2, 1.3. I think if they can get over 1 million, I think that's a win. I'd be more concerned if it goes under, but I doubt it goes under.
Let's do Andy, and we'll get Max one more time, and then John Lewis is logging in here. We'll bring him on. What the hell is going on? Okay, Brady's coming now. He's missing Father's Day, even though he retired from football to be a father. He's going to be here for Father's Day, which I thought was really interesting. But then, he's going to fake call the game in the booth, just for practice. What is going on here?
I think this is a case of your boss telling you what to do. This
Yeah.
is what's happening. Fox is very much making it clear that you are going to be a part of our plans, and this is what's going to happen from now on, buddy. So I think for Tom Brady, I mean, I don't know how much he's really watched of this league or these teams.
Not a second.
Well, he was at the Michigan Panthers game a month ago.
True.
Wow, that doesn't mean he's okay. Okay.
Just saying.
Yeah. No, I mean, I don't know how much really game tape he's watched outside of that Michigan game, but do I think he has an enthusiasm for just football in general? Of course, Tom Brady breathes and dies with football. That's just his livelihood. It was his livelihood for a good majority of his life, and I can see him having enthusiasm for being able to analyze the game. I would love. I mean, a dream scenario is that he would have a chance to be a color commentator in this league. I mean, this league. Look. We've seen spring football have amazing commentators. We've seen guys like Kevin Burkhardt and Greg Olson. Are you kidding me? That was an incredible matchup in 2020. Kevin Cougar's done a great job. Joel Klatt, Kurt Menefee. A lot of these guys just doing outstanding work in this league. So we're not unknown to having great broadcasting people in this space, but I just don't know. As far as Brady goes, it'll be interesting to see what his role is and how that plays into what he's doing into the future. Or if they get him involved next year, who knows? That remains to be seen. But it is kind of funny seeing him. I guess I'm not sure if I'd say he's being strong-armed into this, but obviously there's some things that he has to fulfill now that he's actually part of the Fox Corporation.
Max, what is thoughts on this? This will be we'll get you out of here. But just okay, we do it. It's never with enough time to promote. It's hey, we're doing this. It was the same thing. They emailed out Friday afternoon, hey, we're doing media day tomorrow. I'm well, I'm not flying in the time to do that. I don't know. Is the Brady thing? Is it just getting him involved in this? Do they expect to pop a rating?
I don't even think it's to pop a rating as much as it is to get some social media engagement. No one's going to watch the game because Tom Brady happens to be there for a little bit on television. That's not how this works. But, let's be real. We've done so many rants on how the league's promotion strategy has been ineffective, and we could do a whole other diatribe about that, but that's not what the show's about. So I'll just leave it at this. They can, at this point, do whatever you want to add on, fluff on for the championship game. None of it's going to change anything. So just make it look however you want so you can say it's yours, and then carry on, and let's try to do better this offseason and next season.
Well, we got Marquette King. We got the Blues. It's a national anthem singer. I mean, Max, we're rolling here. I mean, the CFL's got the Jonas Brothers, for God's sake. So, Max, I appreciate it. Stay safe. Keep working. All your other stuff here. I'm sure we'll figure out what's going on after all this. Thanks.
See you.
Let's bring in this gentleman and get ready for this. Boo! 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 Boo!
I heard a lot of slander on here before I got on.
Hey, so John, what do you think about Birmingham being in the championship game?
Finally, looking at the schedules, I predict both the Houston Roughnecks and Michigan Panthers to finish the season at 2-8, and the San Antonio Brahmas maybe just a single win, with Wade Phillips and company return.
Good thing is it mutes your mic when I play that video. John Lewis, how the heck are you? I'm going to keep this in here forever.
Well, as you should. But I will say this. I've been kind of ride or die with the Stallions in the USFL, but I did hedge my bet. If things start going poorly, I'm ready. So
yeah, I saw you pop on that. I'm going to get a jersey if the Brahmas win today. If anyone's curious, and this is a blast from the past. Hey, what else does Reed have saved in the StreamYard? Check this bad boy out. See if you remember this.
Football is fueled by dreams. To go further, get there faster.
That was the old XFL when they rebranded. I got the leaked rebrand video in here. Exciting stuff. John, Stallions running crazy. Would you guys say have we seen more Stallion fans here than Brahmas fans?
For sure.
Absolutely.
John, are you surprised Stallion fans are showing up here? I don't know if the Brahmas expected to be here.
Yeah, it's probably a little bit better. I guess it'd be easier to get there. I mean, I don't know what the drive time would be, but yeah, I think it's a bit of probably more of a known brand, although that didn't really seem to play out in Birmingham. Talking to some people down there, there were people that were still unaware, and Reed, you and I talked about it. There were people that were unaware that who the Stallions were, or that they were playing, or that they were in the playoffs, or even what the UFL was. So, I mean, I think that speaks to there's got to be some stronger marketing efforts going on. But, there is a hardcore group of fans, and I think that they probably made the trek up there. I know there were a lot of the people who do what we do here that are kind of more Birmingham Stallions based that were on their way up there.
We have here a couple of Vincent here. 1-9 Wade Phillips, LOL. Chris here. If San Antonio beats Birmingham, you got to play that every time he comes on the show, and show that picture of him. He's wearing Stallions shirt right now. And then Abdul here. Reed needs to make a screenshot of that, make a T-shirt, send it to John that the Brahmas went. So
I'll wear it every time.
Classic. I was going to ask Emery about this. We'll go around the horn here. And obviously, Mike Mitchell's coming on later, a UFL Insider. We're going to do like a post recap, I think is the plan here once we get back in town and kind of like the season as a whole. But save for like it being the most incredible game today that we've ever seen. And the Brahmas game-winning comeback with their grade the season. How do we feel like we've done here? Like marketing aside, just like football and the storylines, kind of anything that way.
I think I gave the XFL a B last year when you asked the same question. I think I'm going to give them the same grade. And the reason I'm going to give them the same grade, I'm going to be more lenient on them than what I think they could do a lot. Obviously, marketing, we've been talking about it all show. They have to do a better job of it. But I think under the circumstances, the talent level was fantastic. The teams are looking good. There's a lot of competitive games. Coaching was good for the most part, maybe outside of Houston. But for the most part, like the league did well. The presentations were good. I think ESPN needs to stop leaning so much on the betting. I'm so sick and tired of hearing about over-unders 500 times a game. I think Fox's presentation is fantastic. I will keep saying that Fox, Kurt Menefee and Joel Klatt are fantastic in the booth. I think Fox's presentation of football is way better than ABC and ESPN. I think ESPN has to work on that next year. I think marketing needs to improve, but I think overall, the attendance numbers look to be decent. I think there's more that needs to be done on that front. Ratings were better than they were last year, so I think that's a positive. So I think there's a lot of positives you can take with it. I think there's a lot that they can work on in general, but overall, yeah, I'd give it a B. I think that the league has done a good job, and I'm going to be much rougher on them next year.
As someone that for Sports Illustrated just posted the betting odds, I mean, you're really like, I'm so tired of hearing about this.
Well, I have to post something weekly on it, but I'm not throwing it at everyone's face 500 times a game on it within 3 hours. Like, I don't need to hear like 5-6 times an hour. Like, oh, the over-under, is it going to hit? Like, I don't care.
It's the guy that does it with Luganville, and I love Tom. Tom's been on the show multiple times. I had all the ESPN people on last year, and it didn't seem like we needed it this year. I don't know. Like I felt like we had guests aplenty here, where maybe a year ago I was like, okay, we got to get Stormy on. We had Cole on. We had Eric McLean on. But yeah, like is the over gonna the over is still in play? But Andy, thoughts on that? And then I got a question for John.
Yeah, a couple things. First of all, Anthony, you're telling me you're not excited when Jay Sternberger catches the go-ahead touchdown, and they're going to tell us how it hits the player prop? You're not psyched for that?
No, not really. I'm good on not talking about that.
Of course. No, I think it's definitely worn out its welcome. The mat has not only been worn out, it's basically been burned. And for me, look, betting is part of the sports zeitgeist. It's more now so than ever, again, as I said. But you don't have to keep reminding people over and over again. I do think what Fox does, I think, is more subtle, where they'll have a little pop-up where it'll bring up the pregame odds. Like last week, they kept saying, well, not always announcing it, but just kind of that little marker saying, hey, remember St. Louis was favored in this game, and this is not going so well. Like that's kind of something that they remind their audience of, which I think makes a lot of sense. I think in terms of that engagement, that's fine, but I don't need to be hearing about every single yard that the player has and how much closer they are to their over-under, because people, as I said in the kind of the reimagining video that me and Reed did a few weeks ago, like you can talk about that stuff in spurts, but the people who follow that stuff already know all that information. And I don't think that the non-betting public really needs to be inundated with all that information, because at some point it just becomes overload and they really just want to focus on simple narratives or just who's winning the game. That's really the biggest thing that people look at.
John, thoughts for you on that? And I got a couple comments.
Yeah, I think a lot of that is probably kind of a brand push for the ESPN bet. I'm sure they're trying to sign up new people, and they can say, well, there you go.
Yep.
So I think there's probably something to that where they're trying to push these odds and say, hey, you can go on your phone right now and make this bet and make that bet. And Christopher's right on. I think there's a lot of that. They're just trying to drum up some new customers for that, or to get people to continue engage with it. But it does get a little overwhelming. And I'm with Anthony too on the grade as far as this year, because I feel like we should grade on a curve, because it was the way that this merger came together so late, and then they were actually able to get it off the ground. And it was a clunky rollout. There's no question, but the presentations have been good. I think the gameplay has been good. I think a solid B, absolutely, as we grade on a curve on anything. But Reed, as you said, and Anthony brought up, the local marketing and the marketing itself, that's going to need some work in 2025 and really later in 2024. But overall, I've certainly been, as much criticism as we've talked about, I've been pleased with the product all year long.
I have a lot of thoughts on it here. Let's first get to these comments here. Abdul was saying, is there going to be a UFL post-game show today, or are we just going to post the full game? Maybe we'll just post the full game. Yeah, Lowell's the guy, the ESPN guy. There's so much sports betting talking, and obviously we talked about Christopher's thing. And Christopher gave us a super chat. This hotel room isn't free. We're here across the street. Super chats are always nice. Join the channel. John's a member, 99 cents a month. Become a member. I go back and forth. Yeah. So gameplay is good. It's exciting. I don't like that. It felt, a lot of teams felt out of it. Right. And I would rather have the Renegades sub 500 kind of making it versus, okay, well, there was such a divide kind of between the haves and the have nots and getting all that locked up. I'm just, Daryl's obviously had comments here on Moose Johnson about being unhappy and, okay, we want all this stuff. I like that. But I've talked with even my Seattle buddies, Michael and Paul and stuff. And they're like, maybe Fox is just fine with this. And that's kind of my concern. And that's why I feel like we need to keep saying things, because I don't want Fox to be like, well, this is fine. It's cheaper than running, All in the Family reruns or whatever, the Seventh Heaven reruns. And, it's a Saturday afternoon. We're moving the games to Friday. That doesn't feel great for me. I guess we'll go around here. Them moving games, I don't like that. I don't like the Friday. Well, now we have something that's more high profile here. See, that's how it happens. They didn't have anything this year.
Yeah,
I guess here you go first, John.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just going to say, I think they can make this Friday night game a thing, but you worry about the demographics that you're trying to attract on a Friday, and also if you are still only going to have 8 teams in this league, then what's this weekend slate going to look like? So that's my concern. I thought okay, well, if there are 10 teams, you can make this a showcase Friday night kind of thing. But yeah, but then when they say, well, it makes room for IndyCar, and that's where it's this exactly. It's what's your weigh in one against the other for sure.
Let's go around here. Greg's standing by. I have a question from John. I hope someone can answer, but let's get thoughts on this, and then we'll bring Greg on here in a minute.
I already forgot the question.
It's just about moving. We're all ready now. We have something more high profile. We're moving the games to Friday. And we don't know. They're talking expansion. I mean, we can make another expansion video about that, but
it's not going to pull the ratings that WWE SmackDown did, and just because WWE is a much bigger product. There's there's more name brand to it, more name recognition to it. They tried. XFL did this last year. They did a Friday night game. I was there for the Renegades game. They barely had 10, 11,000 fans, which would actually be really good this year. But last year it was not good.
Right.
And that was the same weekend. Also, Taylor Swift was in town, so completely killed the attendance numbers. But the ratings weren't good. I think they made 400,000-500,000 that night. It wasn't a lot. So, and yeah, that was probably on ESPN. So Fox, if they put it on Fox, it could be better. But I guess it really just depends on how they're going to present this game. I anticipate this is going to be 600,000-700,000 per game unless they really knock it out of the park with it. And I mean, could you imagine if they put like the Houston Roughnecks and the Memphis Showboats on Friday night? Like nobody's going to watch. Like that's the game that if you're going to put on Friday night and you're going to hype it up as the marquee, you have to have the best teams playing each other every week. It needs to be like the game of the week. Like it's going to be between these two teams. That's how this is going to work.
It needs to be UFL's Monday Night Football or Sunday Night Football. Yeah.
I like this comment here. Jack Hammers. I got to put it up here if I'm going to make fun of it. Well, not make fun of it. Why does UFL go to insert my local obscure city? We would totally support it. I like that. I like that. Andy, let's get your thoughts. We'll circle back to John because then I think we have someone standing by that knows all about Friday night sports competition here. So let's get Andy's thoughts and then we'll move on here.
Yeah, my thoughts on that are be consistent, not convenient. And the reason I say that is don't do this change just because it's convenient for your broadcast schedule. Be consistent with it. If you want to commit to Friday nights, commit to it. Do that. Fine. The CFL does that with Friday Night Lights. They love doing it. That's their thing. Obviously, in this country, more people are familiar with watching high school football on Fridays in the fall. And in spring, there's not really a concept of that. If you want to make that a thing, go for it. Advertise it, as Anthony said, make it the game of the week, make it really important, as John also alluded to as well. But I don't want them to just keep doing this because, well, we have better programming, we're just going to shift this over. Because that tells me, that shows, at least as a viewer, that tells me that you don't really care about that product nearly as much as you do other assets. Yep. And look, I know it may not be as much of a moneymaker, and I know Eric Shanks was obviously one of the high-end Fox executives. He has a much bigger ulterior motive here at play than the league officials do, because obviously he has to make sure that Fox Sports programming is optimal at all times. But this is something that I would like to see from the league, is that you choose something, you stick with it, and if it works, great. If it's not working, how do we make it better? So for me, I just want it to be more of a plan as opposed to it just being convenient.
Real quick here, we've had a bunch of these comments. John's checking in here, and then we'll get to John. We'll get out of here. Other Canadian CFL experience in the Grey Cup, or it's not the Grey Cup, in the championship game today. I know last year we had Sankey and all of that. No one off the top of my head. I've been trying to remember. We've had like 3 or 4 different people have asked about that. Maybe Andy will do some offsite research here. We'll look into that, John. We'll look into that. John Lewis, anything else from you? We'll bring in Greg. John, I appreciate it. Like his, check out John's channel. John, I think I'm going to come on there soon. We're going to talk about some shenanigans. It won't be 2 hours. John does these short videos, but that probably
we'll make it 2 hours.
John, anything else from you?
No, just looking forward to it. Again, as a lot of us who's followed spring football, I've said this before, we followed it over the years. When you get to a championship game and you've actually completed a season, let's call it a win, and let's hope for a lot more, a lot better. And I think the league will learn from some mistakes in 2024 as we move on to 2025. But looking forward to it today.
John, appreciate it. John the Flynn. Hey, we got John's thanking John's here. I appreciate it.
Thank you, John.
John, don't make any more bad takes here before the championship game.
Well, I want to make so many, and I want them all. I want you to record them all. I'll send them to you.
All right. Thanks, John. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
Let's bring in here a gentleman standing by. I appreciate that. As someone that knows all about Friday destination programming with WWE and SmackDown, what do you make of this? Greg Parks, UFL Board. Appreciate it. Greg was on a couple weeks ago. Like and subscribe here. We've added a few subscribers today. The thoughts that maybe we aren't doing expansion, Greg, that we're just really allocating games to Friday to make room for things that we care more about on Fox.
Well, I don't know if I'd term it that way. At least I hope not, for the sake of the league. But this is something where obviously this has been Friday Night SmackDown spot on for a long time, and so what's interesting is by the time the UFL season comes around, whether it's February, whether it's March, whatever time they start next year, you are going to have that Friday spot already a destination for sports, because you're going to have college football on Fridays. You're going to have college basketball on Fridays. I think there's going to be some other sports offerings perhaps that will be on Fridays as well. So the idea, I think, is to get fans used to Friday nights on Fox being a sports destination night. And hopefully by the time the UFL rolls around, when it kicks off, fans will be used to, tuning in on Friday nights. And this time they're just going to tune into UFL football instead of the Big Ten or instead of college basketball. So that's, I think, in an ideal world, that's what happens, because I know SmackDown is leaving Fox this fall. So, they're going to have to start replacing that programming in the fall. So by the time the winter rolls around, hopefully that's the spot for it. And again, I've made this point on social media before. I'd never understood the connection with expansion and moving to Friday nights to me, it's not difficult to find. I think it's maybe even less difficult for ABC and Fox to find 3 spots on the weekend for UFL games instead of 4. So it might be actually easier on the networks. But, I hopefully, if the league was planning on expanding for the second year, we would have heard about that by now, because we're now into the time of the year where it's going to be less than a year until this league kicks off. And if you're talking expansion, there's been no cities named. There's not even been any rumors of the UFL reaching out to any cities. You'd have to hire head coaches. You'd have to design logos. You'd have to reveal all of this stuff. You'd have to have an expansion draft, all of this stuff in less than a year's time. And now we're talking again about fitting all of this stuff into a very short, compacted time period, which, as we know, has bitten the UFL/XFL/USFL in the butt before. So it doesn't seem like it's in the cards for season 2. I don't think it should be in the cards for season 2. But if we have a successful season 2, let's start talking about it for season 3.
Man, Greg is coming in fire. I appreciate it. He's ready to go here. All right, let's do it. Let's go around the horn. We've not talked expansion yet.
I just took Advil this morning to heal my headache, and now I already have one back up because we're talking expansion. So thanks, Greg. Appreciate it. Look, I agree with Greg. Like, I know expansion is such a fun topic to have, but we have got to stop talking about it. Like, the league has to be profitable. We need to see success. We need to see growth year in and year out before we even consider it. Yeah, I think 2026 is the earliest they should think about expansion. But I mean, where are you going to go? Like, it just seems like they're just going to go with the assets that they have. So where do you go? You go to Oklahoma and bring back the Outlaws? Do you bring back the teams that you had in the past? I know they're very big on Ohio. Like, where I don't know what the next direction is going to be. I assume they're just going to go with former USFL teams and start with those first, and maybe go to New Orleans or something like that. I know there's been a big push on that. Like, for me, like, I hate expansion. It's just like, what's the point of talking about it? Let's try to make it work with the 8 teams we got now, because we've had so many leagues fail. And we saw this with the USFL back in the 80s when they expanded so quickly and it fell apart so badly that everyone went bankrupt and they lost a ton of money out of it. So yeah, let's stick with the 8 teams. Let's make it work in the markets first. Like, let's make it work. Houston needs a lot of work. Memphis needs a lot of work. Michigan needs a lot of work. Even Arlington needs a lot of work.
Everyone needs work.
You got to fix those 4
work.
markets. Those 4, you need to have every one of your teams averaging at least 10,000 fans a game next year, or otherwise you may have to consider relocation for those other teams, and you may need to, before you can. I don't think we should talk expansion first. I think the first conversation needs to be, do we need to relocate teams after next year? I'm fine with everyone staying, but if we got to figure out if these markets are going to work or not. If they're not going to work next year, let's get them in the right markets, average to 10,000 fans a game, and then let's bring on 2 more teams.
Andy, thoughts, and then I'll hop in here.
It's the E word, as I like to call it now, and it has been for some time. Look, people love talking about this in all leagues and all sports because everyone wants to have a team. But as Anthony talked about, the reality is that's just not in the cards for this league right now, because they need to figure out what they're doing with their markets right now. You're telling me that you would be comfortable with expanding when you have 2 teams, Memphis and Houston, who individually combined, their attendance was outdrawn by the Battlehawks in the first game of their season completely. That means you have a lot of work to do. I cannot in good conscience recommend that they expand right now until they figure that out first. And look, if you want to take risks, that's fine. The XFL was going to move from Las Vegas. That is well documented. They were going to move from Las Vegas. They tried, it failed, it didn't work for a litany of reasons. But there's no reason to think that this is going to really happen. There's going to be relocation before there's going to be expansion, because the markets need to work first. There needs to be foundations in place. If you're not going to have individual owners, then at least have successful teams and attendance first. This has to be a baby steps process. As far as the teams being successful, as far as the marketing goes, we obviously want to see more done. But as far as just being successful and not expecting to have 30 teams, that's just a pipe dream, and it has to be approached tepidly if they're even thinking about putting another team in another market and adding to the ones they already have.
We got Mike Mitchell here logging in here. We'll get to him in a few minutes. Appreciate that. We'll get Mike and send him a private note here. Greg, and then I got a question for you, Greg. This is a good one. Yeah, I agree with you where we don't want to have this. Every year we've had a truncated timeline. You know, we dealt with the Vegas thing, and we dealt with this year. And okay, Michigan couldn't sell things in time. And now we're even talking, I mean, they're complaining even about the championship game, and we should have had the bye week. And then last year we wanted the bye week. We didn't want the bye week. Like, there's always all this kind of time stuff. But I agree with that. Like, you need to be moving on this, like, next week or the week, in the next couple of weeks, you got to have these announcements and move on, because you can't just sit idle all summer and then come around to that. Jack's got a question here, and this might be the title next week if Greg or Mike and I do our post game. What is the UFL's end game? I know the AAF wanted to compete with the NFL, but the UFL wants to be like, Greg. What is the UFL's end game?
Based on everything that ownership has talked about, they want to kind of be in their own ecosystem. I don't think it's necessarily a competition with the NFL. It's a competition with any sport and any entertainment entity, but really it's, providing a place for these players to play that don't make it to the NFL, but also, making money, obviously. How are they going to make money? That's a good question. Is it selling the franchises? Is it selling broadcast fees, which you would think would be very difficult now because Fox and ABC/ESPN both have an ownership stake. So the idea when Vince McMahon first relaunched it in 2020 was to get a piece of that broadcast pie where everybody, all these networks and all these cable stations saw that sports programming was the golden goose and they were going to pay billions of dollars. Vince saw that his own company, WWE, was getting a piece of that. And, that was kind of his end game. He wanted to cash in on the rights fees bonanza that was going on. It's still going on for the larger organizations, your NBAs, your NHLs, your NFLs. We haven't really seen that trickle down to some of the lower levels that the UFL would be considered yet. But the fact that Fox owns it means, okay, are they going to sell games to a third party broadcast to kind of cash in on that? So I'm not as sure of the end game of the UFL today as I was when the XFL first relaunched, which takes me back to, is it just selling franchises? Is it trying to make tens of millions of dollars selling these franchises and expanding the market for the UFL? That's what I see right now.
Let's pop around here. I had a comment that's out of my head now because I was making fun of Greg. End game here, because that's what it was. Because it's been mixed. Because you have Moose saying on our show, well, we don't want it to be a developmental league, but then we talk about the players wanting to develop. We talk about is it a sports fan? I don't see anyone in the world except for St. Louis, who the CFL fans want now to be a franchise. I don't see anyone paying money for any of these teams. But what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't know what the end game is. I think right now it's survival. Just survive every year. If they can get through a whole season, I think it's a massive win. But in terms of end game, I have no idea. How much does this league want to expand? I feel like they're so focused more on being a TV product versus a live sports product. That's the difference between them and the NBA and NHL, the leagues they have to compete with in the offseason is they want to be a TV product. That's just the most important thing. They want to be innovative. They want to add in different camera angles. They want to put cameras on refs and players and give the viewers a different perspective.
The drone, wee.
Yeah, that's so loud you can't hear anything else. But they want to have that innovation because the reality is they know they're not going to get the attendance numbers that these other sports are going to get. So if you're going to draw people that are at home, all right, let's make it a great experience for them so that maybe it draws fans away from going to the stadium. Maybe it becomes a TV product thing. You look at the Fan Control Football League, that's a TV product in itself. They play in one place where in Atlanta, Georgia, but it looks
Pullman Yards.
Yeah, but it's a lot of fun to watch on TV. I'm not going to lie. It's not great football, but it's like arena football, but it's still a lot of fun to watch. And I feel like if that's the way the UFL wants to go about it, and I've always said, the Premier Lacrosse League, they do the touring system. I really think the league should have done that in the first place. If they're not interested in getting higher attendance and stuff like that, then just just tour around the country and play these teams everywhere. Because the Premier Lacrosse League, they can do it looks good on TV. It's not a big audience. It's obviously they only maybe do 2,000-3,000 fans in the seats, but at least it looks good on TV, not compared to watching a Houston and Memphis home game where nobody shows up to it. So, but I don't know what the end game is for this league. At the end of the day, I think they just want to survive, and maybe it's a tax write-off for Fox. I don't know, but I think they just want to survive right now.
That makes me think about Greg Taz, survive if I let you. Yeah. Let's get Andy. We'll toss back to Greg, and then we'll bring on Mike here. End game here, kind of that process.
Well, first of all, I want to see this league celebrate its accomplishments a little bit more. And I think that's one of the things that these leagues don't do enough of. Go back to Anthony's point about FCF, and I actually talked about with you guys last night. If the FCF was like still around, I know they kind of still are, but they haven't had a season right in the last year. In my opinion, if I was running that league, I would be trumpeting from the top of the mountains about Quantez Stiggers. That guy started playing in their league, had never played football before, organized professional football or high school or anything. Goes in their league, starts playing, goes to the CFL, and gets drafted by the Jets. Are you kidding me? That's such an incredible story. I would be trumpeting that from the first moment that he got any sort of NFL attention. And I really want these leagues to continue to celebrate themselves and their accomplishments. I think that's one of the biggest things. As far as the end goal, I mean, I think one of the things we keep tossing around is the MLS model, right? Being able to build your assets, be able to slowly but surely get more teams across the nation, and then as notoriety is built, being able to sell them off for franchise fees or being able to have entry fees. I mean, San Diego, I know I talk about my city too much. San Diego's about to get an MLS team next year. It costs $400 million for Mohamed Mansour to start that team. I mean, that is an incredible rights fee to be able to just start a soccer team in that part of the United States or anywhere. And so that has been built through years and years and years of slow buildup from the MLS. You can just debate about, the competition level. I know I have a lot of people I talk to, especially people who watch, European soccer or soccer across the world, and say, well, it's not good enough, or, all the retired players go there. But you know what the fact of the matter is? They make money and they're making moves. I mean, Lionel Messi is playing in Miami. I don't think that could have happened 10 years ago. Now it's a reality. Those are the kinds of things that you have to think about as a league like this, and you have to have that slow build-up. So if you want to go that model, I think that's notable. That's fine. But I don't know if that's their plan. That's the thing. I think that should be their plan, at least part of the plan. I don't know if that's what their end goal is. It really just seems like it's flatlining.
You got to have patience, and you got to have a willingness to spend a lot of money for a long time to reach that point. I mean, think about how long the MLS has been around before they were able to turn that stuff into profit. So that remains to be seen how willing Fox and Redbird are to continue to split the costs of a pro football league, whether it's 8 franchises or 10 or whatever the case may be.
Greg, anything else you want to plug? And I'm sure you're going to have post stuff coming out. Is Mark here? Is Mark covering for Board? Anything else you want to talk about before we get you out? We'll bring Mike on.
Yeah, UFL Board editor Mark Nelson is in St. Louis, so he's got some coverage on social media and on UFLboard.com. I tweeted out at Greg M. Parks a couple of my preview articles that I posted this week leading up to the game, and I'll have some thoughts certainly after the game next week as well. And then we kind of turn the page to the off season, and this is the interesting time of the year for me where we start looking ahead to the draft and other player acquisition processes through the off season. So I'll have a lot about that, and looking back on last year's rookie draft for the XFL. I'll have some articles looking at the upcoming summer showcases that the UFL will be holding. So a lot of interesting stuff still coming up in the off season. So, the NFL, they don't have much of an off season, and I like to think I don't have much of an off season for the UFL in terms of coverage either. So you can stay tuned to UFLboard.com for that.
Well, Greg, I appreciate it as always. I was checking out a lot of CM Punk here with Drew. There's a lot. I like that. It was hot. WWE. I don't know if I ever wanted to see that Drew McIntyre CM Punk match, but it certainly looks exciting now. Greg,
they're working hard to make you want to see it, Reed. That's what you can say.
They really are. It's like, okay, I've seen this now for a year. I really want to see this. So,
yep.
Greg, I appreciate it. Chris said he followed you. So there we go. We appreciate it.
Awesome.
Awesome. Thanks, Greg. We will bring in the UFL insider here, our own Mike Mitchell. Mike, I think we're going to, schedule willing, God willing, we'll figure out a time to do kind of a mid postseason kind of recap here this week. Like and subscribe for that. Mike, is the UFL too focused on being the TV product?
That's such a multi-layered,
it's really going
to take a long time to get into that. I'll say they want to get to the point where they're have revenue streams in every aspect of the league. yeah, we'll probably talk about it after the championship game. But I have to wonder sometimes how committed Redbird is to this long term. Their kind of deal with me is I feel like they're used to getting into something and then getting out and maximizing their investment. And I think this merger happened because they didn't see the light at the end of the tunnel. I think Fox was having that same kind of viewpoint, and they wanted to see if they can hit a home run with this thing. So I think I've said this a million different places, your show included, podcast included. I think this bought this entity 2 more years, and then we'll see what for Fox, I get it, right? Instead of paying a rights fee for a league, you control costs. You don't have to pay a rights fee. You own the league. You get to pocket whatever you pocket. So, the ratings are respectable. They're on par or better than a lot of these other leagues that are, that have been around for a while. So, that's not an easy thing to do. So, whether or not they can grow, they've developed a nice floor. Whether or not there is a ceiling, it makes me wonder whether or not Redbird sees that ceiling. And, I'm not saying this is going to happen in this offseason, but what if all of a sudden we get a news alert that they've kind of gracefully bowed out? I'm not saying that's coming, but it's just something to think of down the line. So endgame, I heard you guys talking about it. Tough act to follow with Greg Parks on here. He always does a tremendous job. They want to be a standalone league, MLS-esque, and have that type of success. Whether or not they can get there remains to be seen.
I got a comment. If you guys have questions for Greg, or for Mike, let me know. Too many. It's also hard with like the Anthony and Andy. It's really just hard for my life here. All that stuff. Mike, like that's what I was saying before you got on here. Like I'm not nearly obviously as into all this as you are with the weeds and all that stuff. You would have liked sitting with the bar with us last night. A lot of different kind of like looking at the different XFL exec or UFL execs, kind of really just tremendous people watching for about an hour there. We got back and had a nightcap at the hotel. But like I would not be surprised in the next 6 months there's an article like Redbird sells off UFL stake to Fox or whatever. Like is that I don't know, over under. I mean, is that close to? Would that be something that could happen in the next 6 months?
You got to wonder with them. Like, when do they get out? They usually get out. Like, I'm not saying they're getting out of Liverpool and all that stuff, but a lot of these things they do, a lot of these investments they make, they have, they're thinking about long-term gains and then selling it off, right? And that's, they get people to invest, and so I think that's the end game goal for the UFL is to eventually get to the point where the property is so hot that they can sell it off like MLS franchises and all that. But that takes a lot of time. Pro football is very expensive. You need a lot of patience to pull that off. So I'm not saying, it's just something I thought of when you guys were talking about endgame, wondering about what Redbird's endgame is. We look at Fox. Fox has been a constant in this space, right? So, if you look at the 2020 with the XFL, 2021 TSL, and then of course the USFL onto the UFL, they seem pretty invested in this thing. Now, of course, we just saw what they did. I wrote about this SI, everybody knows about it. The UFL took a backseat, opened up the door, took one for the team, for lack of a better term, to create an opening there for the IndyCar series. Their IndyCar jump ship from NBC to Fox because they have all those nice broadcast windows. How did those broadcast windows become available? UFL was moved to Friday nights. So
it doesn't speak to me as a commitment for that. Any thoughts, questions, anything? We'll toss Anthony here.
I mean, so I guess my follow-up would be, what was the point of Redbird getting into it in the first place? I mean, do they actually think they're going to be able to sell like their portion of the league off more than what they got at the beginning? I mean, I just don't feel like this league is making the type of revenue that would, make it enough for Redbird to be like, oh, we're going to sell it off and make more money off of it.
I think they saw the success of the XFL in 2020. The Danny Garcia, Dwayne Johnson element. They thought, this could be a home run. I mean, so many people over the years, I've been following these leagues my whole life. They see the potential of what a pro football league in the NFL offseason, how popular it could potentially be. And so, they're used to betting on winners. So like they bet on the Yankees and all this stuff. And they're at Liverpool. All these things are winners. These entities are winners. These are championship models. With leagues like the UFL, let's face it, like we don't know that these are forever leagues. We don't know if these are 4-year leagues with the like MLB, NHL, NFL. Those are forever leagues. They're going to be around forever. So we don't know that about this league. So, I mean, this is a long conversation. Like I said, there's so many different layers to this thing. I'd rather talk about the championship game.
We'll do that before you. We'll do that.
But I hear you. But I hear you guys. This is something I thought I'd be delving in with Reed next week. But as when the smoke clears, because there's going to be league meetings after all this, after the smoke clears from the championship game, and they're going to reassess and then look at what they have a 2-year plan in place. They got government approval. They're supposed to implement a lot of the things that they want because they have more time now. So let's see. Danny Garcia talking about having a more strategic schedule next year, and we'll see how they implement it, what they do, when the schedule is. There's a lot of questions for after the season, which is I guess around 8 p.m. tonight, maybe 8:30ish Eastern time.
I got one more question for Mike. We'll let you talk about the game here. Let's get Andy here real quick. Pat saying DJ and Danny have to do more. I'm kind of underwhelmed by that all this season.
I just don't know how much their involvement has been here, to be honest. I mean, we've barely seen Dwayne or Danny involved with this, really. I know they've been co-owners, but a lot of people have pointed this out this year, and I feel the same way. This felt like an acquisition, not a merger. I mean, this is really a Fox product, and even though ESPN is involved, even though ABC is involved, it's from the outset, it really has felt like it's Fox's product. So for Danny and Dwayne, I don't know what their skin in the game of this either. I mean, Dwayne obviously put out a tweet yesterday about how the game's coming. I don't know if he's actually where's he going to be watching it from? I don't know. Like in his gym somewhere in Honolulu. I have no idea. Like there's so many mitigating factors here. Like how much, like you said, how much stake is there really in this league? How much can they really sell off? How much equity is built into this league, especially when it's changed hands so many different times? I mean, that's not really a thing that you can really trace most of the time. And I mean, it's not a publicly traded entity. It's not on the stock market, nothing like that. So it's kind of hard to really trace that through. So for me, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Redbird just decided to pack up and sail off after this year, because I don't know. Again, we talked about what's the long-term plan here. And if we're not sure what the long-term plan is, I don't know what Fox is thinking either. And I don't know if Redbird sees it that way too. So for me, it is a bit strange, and I don't know. It may have just been a weird 2-year experiment for Redbird overall.
Mike, I got a follow up for you, and then I promise him we'll talk game here, guys. Because I'm going to do a follow up, and I'm going to follow that up with a game question. We see a lot, even in the comments here. Okay, they want to do the MLS thing. They want to do the MLS thing, and okay, they're drawing more. If you look at hockey, or you look at this, or WNBA, I remember having Ben Fisher on last year talking with USFL of this isn't the same to equate, because you have, even if a soccer game, you're out drawing, there's more of those games. The fans are more invested monetarily wise, right? They've had season tickets for 20 years. They're buying merch. There's all these other intangibles when it comes to selling that. But how do you view that with the UFL, with the teams, in terms of I mean, they rank better than some soccer games, or they rank better than whatever, but that doesn't mean that they're equal in value by any means.
No, it takes time. None of these leagues were home runs. Even the NFL wasn't a home run in the early going. So there was struggles there. There was talk about canceling the Super Bowl. It wasn't in the early stages of it. It was one conference is one side. The NFL strong. The AFL is kind of a gimmicky league. This is just like an exhibition game. The early stages in the media, they were talking about it just being some crazy exhibition gimmick game. And now here we are. So it takes time with all these leagues, MLS, all of them. I think they have a nice, respectable floor in terms of ratings. Fox has cut out the middleman. Fox and Disney, this is a modest investment for them. And they're not going crazy with spending, obviously. And so, that's why Fox has been into this since till 2020 with the XFL. It's low cost. The question has always been with these leagues, with these entities, with the people who run these leagues, is whether or not they want to take the risk and take the chance. If you see the possibility that, hey, we might close up shop here in a year or two, time to swing for the fences, right? That's my take on it. Because I think, like I said, this merger was done to buy the league more time to see if the product and the viability of it can grow. And I think it's a very good product. It's just a question of whether or not it catches on with the mainstream. That's kind of the issue right now. To get sponsors, to get more people into the leagues, you have to prove your worth over time. It takes time.
Okay, Mike, here we go. You got 2 minutes. Let's talk the game. Birmingham Brahmas, I don't know. Thoughts. We talk game before you come up, and I want to make sure you guys talk about it. So talk about the game. What do you think here?
Oh, I obviously I think the Stallions are going to win today. Anthony did a very good job of writing a preview before the season. I predicted the Stallions would win the championship. This would be their third straight. Obviously, they're the first pro football team outdoor that would have accomplished that, winning 3 straight championships. Maybe the Chiefs do it in the NFL next year, but we haven't seen it since the Eskimos. Maybe I'll get in trouble for saying that, and the Packers in the 60s. So it's a fascinating rematch, the way these two teams stack up against one another. It also could be the swan song for Wade Phillips. The crazy thing about Wade Phillips and San Antonio Brahmas is Wade Phillips was not supposed to be a part of this league. If it wasn't for Hines Ward balking and not signing the new seasonal contract paperwork for coaches, Wade Phillips would have been at home right now, like eating Cheetos or whatever he does in his spare time. So this could be the end of the run for Wade. You know, like there's no guarantee that even if he comes back next year that he's going to get to another championship. I think it's pretty cool that this is his first time ever in 55 years of coaching, leading a team to a title game. So as a head coach. So I think there are a lot of very cool storylines to tonight's championship. I think it's going to be a very good. I think these are the two best teams. I think San Antonio overall was better than St. Louis. I know a lot of people favored St. Louis to win last week, but how could you with the way AJ McCarron's like hobbling around on one leg? The Brahmas is a pretty awesome story. They're not really the Brahmas from last year. They had over 40 new players. They benefited a lot from the merger. They adopted a lot of Houston Roughnecks from last year's 7-win team, and they got a bunch of NFL draft picks on their team. Recent NFL draft picks: Anthony McFarland, Marquez Stevenson, etc. So I think these are in fact the two best teams in the league, and I think we're going to have a heck of a game. But I favor Birmingham doing something that no outdoor pro football team has done in over 4 decades.
All right, I got one quick follow-up for Mike, and then we'll bring on Evan. I got a follow-up for Evan about Wade, so that'll be a good transition here. Darren wants to know real quick, do you think they go back to the XFL kickoff next year? We talked a lot about that, remember, during the preseason show. Thoughts on that here as we get out of the season?
I think it's going to be fun to watch what happens in the NFL. Like, some people are not taking into account that it could be a disaster. Like, I'm not saying the XFL kickoff is a disaster, but the way the NFL teams approach it, how it's implemented. Remember, they only have a 1-year buy-in basically in the NFL. So if for whatever reason, I know they've tweaked it to kind of like fit whatever they think will be best to enhance the kickoff. The UFL's leadership is very, with Moose on top, I think they want to stick with the current kickoff. We saw, it was funny, up until Chris Rowland, the final game weekend of the season, we didn't have any kickoff returns for touchdowns, although we've had a lot of great field position because of the way the kick is designed. I don't know. I don't have the injury data in front of me. If it's a smashing success in the NFL, the XFL kickoff, I think the UFL will have no choice but to consider using it. If for whatever reason the NFL is not enamored with it at the end of the season, it's like let's do something else here. All options are on the table. The XFL kickoff would have to take off. It has in the ELF and other places. It would have to take off in the NFL and be a success. For the UFL is going to be forced to implement the same exact kickoff, which is a little bit different than the XFL kickoff that Sam Schwartzstein and his team designed.
Last comment here, all around hustle. They might as well fold this season. How y'all talking honestly? I thought we've been pretty positive today. I mean, he's a fan. I mean, I don't think we've been that bad. Mike, anything else? We'll bring on Evan here. Anything else from you?
No, that's basically it. Thank you very much for having me on. You guys have done a great job. Shout out to Anthony there. Oh, one thing I wanted to shout out this guy because there's so many super fans out there. Ken Gill. He's out there. Yeah,
he's to get us last night. We were.
Yeah, shout out to him. Like, he's funny. Like, you see him all over X. I guess you don't call it Twitter anymore, but he's always plugging the UFL stuff, the championship game. I don't care if it's like a thread on X about salad. He'll put in a reply there that's about the UFL championship game. So there's so many super fans out there, like, who are in St. Louis right now. I appreciate all you guys because I love this concept and I want it to stick around forever. And I think it's a quality, and it should. It's great for the football landscape. So excited about today's game, and thanks again for having me on.
Well, we appreciate it. Like I said, let's get, Mike, we'll try to do recap this week. Like and subscribe if you want to hear more from Mike, our UFL insider here. So I appreciate it, Mike. Thank you. And I appreciate making time today because I know it's busy. Hope you guys have a good Father's Day.
Thank you. Happy Father's Day to you guys.
All right, let's bring on here Evan Wilsmore. Evan, last guest today. We had Evan for our kickoff show. Couple questions. First off, how does it feel seeing the Brahmas, basically the Roughnecks, more or less kind of in the championship game today as someone that covered the team last year?
Yeah, it's great. Really happy for Wade Phillips, Mark Lillibridge, AJ Smith, all the players that were carried over from Houston. But it's bittersweet overall because you look at what happened to Houston and that market, and they had the worst team in the league this year. So I feel bad for those fans. Again, I'm happy for everybody that was directly involved with the Roughnecks last year who carried over into San Antonio. But it's tough. You got to think about the people in Houston who were stripped of that success this year. So mixed feelings, but I'm excited to see the product tomorrow. What they put together on both sides of the ball, and I think it's safe to say that Wade Phillips absolutely deserves to be in this position. He's been I guess a championship winning coach before, not as a head coach obviously, but his time with the Broncos and with the Rams as well. So again, really happy for him, and we'll see how it plays out.
Well, yeah, that's my follow-up, and then we'll go around here. Like, what does that do to Wade's legacy? I thought it was cool that they really kind of celebrated that, him being here as his first. What do you think that does for his legacy, Evan? And then we'll go around.
Yeah, I mean, I think, it does a lot for his legacy. The guy I think he's 76 now, and this is really his first chance at being a head coach, I believe, or, well, I might have to double check that because he's been in so many places. But the idea is, he's going to a pro football championship at 76 years old, and it's his first time doing so as a head coach. Like I said, all the other places where he's done it, he's been an assistant, defensive coordinator, whatever. I think it does a lot for his legacy. I remember when they first announced that Wade Phillips would be a coach in this league, which was like 2 years ago, for the XFL. And that was easily the biggest name, that they could have brought on board, I think, for the coaching, for all the coaches that they had, rather. And, if he wins this, I think it does a lot. It's not going to feel maybe tremendous because, again, he has so much experience and he's been in the Super Bowl type of position before at the NFL level. But, he wins this one. It's maybe a nice send off because at 76 years old, again, I'm assuming he's 76, I think is what I read. Assuming he's 76, that's pretty old, to be a head coach. And if I were in his position, maybe you win the championship and ride off into the sunset and retire. I know he seems to love doing this. And all my interactions with him have been positive, even if they've been, few and far between, even when I was in Houston. But no, it does a lot. Absolutely.
The same question for you guys. I mean, like I said, I enjoy you should celebrate this. You should hear this. Mike's talking hey, Birmingham wins, they're the first outdoor football, team. I like feeling make yourself part of the zeitgeist of all these other leagues. What do you think this does for Wade?
Yeah, I think it's going to do the same thing it did for Bob Stoops when he won the championship last year for Arlington. I mean, you look at Stoops' first 2 seasons in the regular season with the Renegades. He went 2-3 in 2020. He went 4-6 in 2023. And I don't know if a lot of people really believe that he could be a professional head coach. And then he went in and made that incredible postseason run to win the championship last year. I think it's going to do the same thing for Wade Phillips. I think it's going to. He's already done a tremendous amount since being in this league, going 7-3 last year, taking Houston to the playoff. He went 7-3 again this year. This time he was able to get to the championship game. So I think in terms of what he's done legacy-wise, I know at the end of the day, the UFL is not going to be on the same level as the NFL, so people may not think it's a big deal. But the impact that Wade Phillips is going to have on all these players. I mean, how many of these players are going to get onto NFL rosters during training camp? I think a lot of people are looking at the San Antonio Brahmas, especially on defense, and they have some really good skill players on offense that I think can get signed by the NFL and start going into training camp. If he ends up, and I was listening to one of his press conferences this week. It sounds like he wants to keep coaching. If he has the opportunity to, he's going to stay and he's going to keep coaching. So I think for the legacy that he's starting to build right now is that he can develop guys to get into the NFL, which I know the league doesn't want to push on. But I think that's a big deal for players that maybe are on the fence that come out of college and maybe they didn't get drafted, or former veteran NFL players who get kicked out. They lose their job in the league, and if they want to look at a team to play for, they want to play under Wade Phillips because he knows he can develop them and get them ready for the NFL.
We'll go to Andy here. Any class questions? We're going to be done here at the top of the hour. Get ready, Anthony. Well, Andy and I got to get to the media, but you got to be there. You have real work to do. I just sit on my phone and tweet funny stuff during the game. But Andy and I will walk over there. Andy's gets to meet our giveaway guest today. You got it. I don't know. John, I think it's John, his wife, or John, his son. But yeah, he's excited for that. Anyway, any last questions here? Make sure you comment because then we'll get out of here. Andy, yeah, thoughts on this? Because that's actually really good, kind of him developing and getting known for that. Let's get more of those coaches in there. What do you think about Wade? Anything else?
I mean, what better way for Wade to really honor not only his legacy, but his father's legacy and win on Father's Day? The late, great Bum Phillips. Obviously, a renowned figure in the state of Texas. With the Houston Oilers, that franchise, those fans just absolutely loved his father. A lot of people love Wade. I mean, that would be just a tremendous storyline for him if he was able to win on Father's Day and get his real first championship for him and his father. His father not able to bring that to Houston, but was just, like I said, a beloved figure. I think that would be immense. I mean, Wade is 76 years young. You know, he loves doing this. I still can recall in my youth watching him coach the defense for the San Diego Chargers, being able to just bring ferocity on defense and just really making the careers of guys like Sean Merriman, Sean Phillips, and just outstanding players on that defense. I always remember Wade. His accomplishments are few and far between. I mean, there's so many of them. There's just such a wide breadth of them. And yet, I just wonder if that's going to come to fruition today. I hope, for his sake, I mean, that would be absolutely wonderful. I did want to turn it over to Evan really quick. There's a quick question. Evan, obviously, you spent an extensive amount of time with the Houston Roughnecks last year, a lot of this coaching staff, some of these players. I know you haven't been around them, obviously, as much this year, but do you sense there's a difference in mentality with this coaching staff and this team than last year? Because obviously they ended the season not in the greatest of ways. I know you were standing next to Anthony when the shocking upset at the hands of the Arlington Renegades happened. Do you feel like there's a different sense with this team this year?
You mean the Roughnecks?
With the Brahmas.
Okay, yeah.
The artist formerly known as the Roughnecks.
Right. I mean, I feel like it's a bit different just because, again, you know, and it's been brought up a couple times, while there are some key pieces from the Roughnecks team last year, it's still a pretty different team. And again, I give a lot of credit to Mark Lillybridge. You know, Mike was talking about how they had like 40 new players or something. And just to be in the position where you have an opportunity to now win the championship with so much turnover and you know, different faces, you know, whether they're, you know, considered to be maybe better or highly qualified than the previous people, you know, it's really just an incredible effort. So is there a different vibe around it? A little bit, I'd say. You know, like I went to a game in San Antonio and, you know, I felt like maybe the culture down there was a bit different, the way that they kind of sell themselves. It's still a Texas team, you know, and I think that's good for a guy like Wade Phillips. And that was especially important when he was in Houston, you know, with the lineage there with his father. And it just made a lot of sense. San Antonio, again, it's a bit different. They've incorporated some other elements, in particular, a Latin American element that I felt very strongly when I was there. So again, that's obviously a bit different than Houston, but the idea is, you know, it's still Texas and, you know, they still have a lot of guys there that, you know, seem to have pretty deep roots within the state. So that's probably the best way I can put it. You know, it's kind of hard to gauge just because, again, there is so many different faces. But when I was there, you know, I did talk to everybody that had been in Houston, and that did feel very familiar.
A couple of comments here, and then we'll go around the horn. We'll get final predictions. We'll get out. I'm about ready to use the facilities here as we get done here today. Abdul says, if the championship game gets 2 million viewers, I need you 2 shots. That's fine. I have no problem doing that. Yeah, I'll do 2 shots of Terramana. Robert here says, today is the day to celebrate the UFL. I think he's mad because he says here, if you guys were so smart, why are you not working for the league? I thought about that last spring because I do primarily weddings during the summer. And I thought, man, I really actually could take like a couple months to go to Texas. A lot of corporate stuff right now for me. And honestly, like the league can't afford me. I don't want to be rude about it, but that's kind of where I'm at. But I did think about that last year when our wedding business completely took a tank in the off season. Like, hey, I could go live in Texas for a couple months. Like that would be fun. But Evan, let's get final predictions here. We'll go around. State your claim here, Brahmas and Stallions.
Yeah, I'm going to take the Stallions in this game. I'm going to be cheering really hard for San Antonio. And, boy, if they win, I'm going to be so happy, you know, because, again, of how many people I know on that staff, and it's going to be incredible. But I really have a gut feeling that Birmingham is going to be a 3-time champ, which I think Mike was saying hasn't been done in 4 decades in pro football. You know, they're just so complete. And I know they've struggled, and I know the last playoff game against Michigan – maybe there were a few concerns. Martinez had to be benched and Corral came in, and we'll see how everything plays out today. But they just, they have so many weapons, and Skip Holtz just comes across as a guy that really knows what he's doing. And I think that they're in a really good position. But I'm picking them more than anything because San Antonio has already beat them. And I wonder if, Birmingham is going to roll out a completely different game plan. And I think San Antonio is maybe more capable of, pulling out some more interesting cards. Like we've seen what AJ Smith can do on the offensive side of the football and how, again, creative he is. So I do think that, maybe the Brahmas could produce some more exciting plays, but I feel like Birmingham they have too much, and I'm going to take them to win this game.
All right, toss to Anthony, Andy, and then we'll get out of here.
Yeah, I'm going to take the Stallions too. I had them in my prediction article at 26-24. Look, I think San Antonio, like Evan said, like San Antonio is very capable of coming up with big plays, and I think they're going to have a couple really big plays today. But I think overall, look, Birmingham knows how to win. Like they just have a winning mentality. They've only lost 4 games in 3 years for a reason. This is a very disciplined team. They protect the football well. They're very smart with what they do. I think Skip Holtz knows exactly when to lead with Adrian Martinez versus throwing in Matt Corral. Like he's very smart. He's very strategic. He knows his players better than they know themselves. So I think at the end of the day, it all comes down to coaching. I think Wade is a great coach, and nothing against that coaching staff, but I think Skip Holtz he knows exactly what it takes to win in spring football, and I trust him a little bit more, and I trust this team a little bit more. Especially, I think the big thing we haven't talked about is San Antonio's offensive line versus Birmingham's defensive line, and I think Birmingham's defensive line with Carl Davis and Taco Charlton are so good, and I think they're going to be able to get pressure on Chase Garbers and that Brahmas offense. So I like the Stallions to win.
Andy, for you.
In the words of Pinball Clemens, who said on your show 2 years ago at the Grey Cup when no one gave the Argos a chance, he said, "It's going to take a miracle, but I believe in miracles, and I believe in the Brahmas." I am taking the Brahmas to win this game. Their defense, I think, is going to play out of their minds. I believe in their system. They've played with a chip on their shoulder this entire year. I think they're ready to do it one more time. Listen, this entire hotel might chase me out into the street and out of town, but if that's how it's going to be, so be it. I believe the Brahmas are going to win. I take them to win 22-17. My MVP is Chase Garbers. Defensive MVP, I think, is going to be Devontae Beckett. And my last bold prediction, Jontre Kirkland throws a touchdown pass.
I like it. Like I said, we were, who was I with last year? Evan, Jason. We were at the Grey Cup when Cody Fajardo led the Montreal Alouettes down the field, beat the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. I've seen miracles happen. I agree. I said I'll buy a Brahmas jersey if they win. I will be excited for that. Evan, I appreciate it. Taking time. Evan, Assistant Director of Player Personnel over with the Vegas Nighthawks. We appreciate that. Everybody for coming on. Like and subscribe. Join the channel. Give a thumbs up. If nothing else, doesn't cost anything. We will be back. Jason and I are going to be back Tuesday to do our CFL recap. Andy and I will figure out when the heck. Andy and I will do a recap at some point this week when we get back in town. And I think Mike and I are going to do a full deep dive at some point, probably Thursday for the Friday episode. I know Anthony's going to have a lot of stuff out on Sports Illustrated. Check out Greg's stuff on UFL Board. Anything else I forgot? Anything?
I think we're great. Let's rock and roll.
All right. Appreciate it, guys. Thanks, Evan. Appreciate Anthony and Andy being here the whole time. Thanks, everyone, for watching. We're going to head over to the game, and we'll see you next time. Thanks. As I do this. And